They thought I was weak. They thought I'd never fight back. For 35 years, I was the family ATM, the responsible daughter who paid for everything while my spoiled younger sister got treated like a princess. Every family crisis, every emergency, they came to me with their hands out, and I gave. Because that's what good daughters do. Right, wrong. 1 week before my sister's wedding, I stood frozen outside my parents' bedroom door. My mother's voice drifted through. "We'll use Sarah's money for the Hawaii tickets. Then we dump her at the airport. She'll get over it, she always does." My sister's laughter echoed in response. In that moment, something inside me shattered. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I pressed record on my phone and captured every word of their betrayal. They had no idea what I'd just inherited. My grandmother, the only person who ever truly loved me, had left me her entire estate. $340,000. And my parents were scheming to steal it all. So I let them think they'd won. I played the obedient daughter one last time. Wedding day arrived. They drove to LAX with their stolen tickets ready to abandon me and fly to paradise. But when they reached the gate, tickets canceled. Cards declined. Chaos erupted. Their phones lit up. 1 call, 10 calls, 50 calls, 110 missed calls screaming my name. Where was I, first class to the Maldives, champagne in hand, watching their perfect plan explode from 4,000 miles away, but that airport meltdown. That was just the opening act. What came next will blow your mind. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 35 years old, and for most of my life I believed that love meant sacrifice. As an accountant at Morrison & Associates in San Diego, I'd built a stable, predictable life, one that looked successful on paper but felt hollow in practice. Because while I was climbing the corporate ladder, I was also funding someone else's dream, my family's. The day I picked up my Toyota Camry from the dealership, I cried in the parking lot for 20 minutes. It wasn't a luxury vehicle. No leather seats, no fancy upgrades, just a reliable silver sedan with that new car smell. But it was mine, or at least I thought it was. After 8 years of brown bag lunches, skipped vacations, and saying no to drinks with colleagues because I was saving for something important, I'd finally done something for myself. The salesman had looked at me strangely when I ran my hand along the hood like it was made of gold, but he didn't understand. This car represented more than transportation. It represented the possibility that I could be more than the family bank account. I should back up and explain how I got here. My parents, Richard and Susan Chen, raised 2 daughters in a modest 3-bedroom house in Riverside, about 2 hours inland from where I lived now. On the surface, we looked like any other Asian American family trying to build a better life. My father worked in logistics. My mother did part-time bookkeeping for local businesses. We weren't wealthy, but we weren't poor either. We were comfortable. Or we should have been. The problem was Lisa. My younger sister, 28 years old, still living in her childhood bedroom, had somehow convinced our parents that she was made of porcelain and I was made of steel. When we were kids, Lisa got the pretty dresses and I got the hand-me-downs. She got piano lessons while I got told that sports were more practical for my build. When she barely graduated high school, our parents celebrated like she'd won a Nobel Prize. When I graduated summa cum laude from UC Irvine, my father's only comment was, "Good, now you can get a job and help out." And help out I did. For the past 13 years, ever since I landed my first accounting position, I'd been sending money home. It started small, $200 a month to help with expenses. Then it became $500 when Lisa's car needed repairs. Then $800 when my father's hours got cut. Then $1,000 because, well, that's just what it became. $12,000 a year every year like clockwork. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself they needed me. I told myself this was what family meant. Meanwhile, Lisa worked part-time at a boutique clothing store, spent her paychecks on makeup and brunch with friends, and contributed exactly nothing to the household. But she was the baby. She was the pretty one. She was the one who made our mother smile. I was just Sarah, reliable, boring Sarah. Every Sunday evening I'd call home, The conversations followed the same script my mother would ask about work. I'd give a brief update, then she'd launch into a detailed report about Lisa's life, her new boyfriend, her Instagram likes, the drama with her coworkers. When I tried to share anything about my own life, I'd get a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before she redirected back to Lisa. My father barely got on the phone anymore. When he did, it was usually to mention some expense coming up. The water heater needed replacing. The roof was leaking. Lisa needed her wisdom teeth removed. I paid for all of it. The car was supposed to be different. For once, I was putting myself first. I'd been driving a 15-year-old Honda Civic that rattled whenever it went over 50 miles per hour. I deserved something better. But when I went to register the Camry, the insurance quote made my stomach drop. As a single woman in California with a long commute, my premium would be nearly $300 a month. My father had suggested the solution: put it under our policy. We have multi-car discount and we're older, so the rate is better. You can just pay us directly, save yourself $100 a month. It made financial sense. That's what I told myself as I signed the title over to his name. It was just paperwork. It was still my car. I was still the one making the payments, maintaining it, driving it to work every single day. But that night, lying in bed in my one-bedroom apartment, staring at the ceiling, I felt a tiny whisper of unease. Something about having my name absent from that title felt wrong, felt vulnerable. I pushed the feeling away. These were my parents. They wouldn't. My phone shattered the 2 a.m. silence with a shrill ring. I jolted awake, heart hammering. Nobody calls at 2 a.m. unless something is catastrophically wrong. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand, squinting at the screen. Mom's contact photo, a picture from last Christmas, where she'd actually smiled, glowed in the darkness. "Hello?" My voice came out hoarse with sleep and sudden fear. "Sarah!" My mother's tone was clipped, businesslike, not the voice of someone calling with an emergency. "Your father needs to talk to you about the car." I heard him in the background, his voice low and urgent, though I couldn't make out the words. "What about the car? Is something wrong with it?" I sat up, fully awake now, dread pooling in my stomach. We need to discuss it. Can you come by this weekend?" "Mom, it's 2 a.m. What's going on?" A pause. Then my father's voice, closer now, like he'd taken the phone. "We'll talk Saturday. Be here at 10. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling slightly. In the darkness of my bedroom, that whisper of unease had become a scream. I couldn't fall back asleep after that call. I lay there in the dark, my mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. By the time my alarm went off at 6:30, I'd already been awake for hours, staring at the water stain on my ceiling and trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But I wasn't overreacting. Deep down, I knew that. Because this wasn't the first time my family had pulled the rug out from under me. It was just the latest chapter in a story that had been written long before I ever bought that Camry. The pattern started when I was 7 years old. It was my birthday, and I'd been dropping hints for weeks about the art set I'd seen at the toy store, 72 colored pencils in a wooden case, the kind that real artists used. I'd drawn pictures of it, left the catalog open on the kitchen counter, even told my mother I'd be happy with just that one thing. On my birthday morning, I unwrapped a package of notebook paper, a box of ballpoint pens, and a scientific calculator. "For school," my mother had said brightly, as if she'd given me something wonderful. "You're so good at math, Sarah. These will help you get even better grades." 2 months later, for Lisa's 5th birthday, our living room looked like a toy store had exploded. A dollhouse that was taller than she was. A miniature kitchen set with real running water. Stuffed animals piled so high they toppled over. I remember standing in the doorway watching Lisa squeal with delight and feeling something hard and cold settle in my chest. When I asked my mother why Lisa got so many presents, she'd said, "Well, she's littler. She needs more things to keep her happy." I learned early that my purpose was to achieve, and Lisa's purpose was to be adored. The college situation drove that lesson home with brutal clarity. I'd worked my tail off in high school, straight A's, AP classes, volunteer work, the whole package. I got into UC Irvine with a partial scholarship, but I still needed loans for the rest. When I asked my parents if they could help with even a small portion, my father had looked at me over his newspaper and said, "You're 18 now. Time to figure things out on your own. That's what adults do." So I figured it out. I worked 2 jobs while taking a full course load. I ate ramen for dinner more nights than I could count. I graduated with honors and $30,000 in debt that took me 7 years to pay off. Lisa, on the other hand, barely scraped through high school. She got into a community college and flunked out after 1 semester too busy partying. She'd admitted to me during a rare moment of honesty. Did my parents tell her to figure it out on her own? Of course not. They paid for her to try again at a different school, then a 3rd school when that didn't work either. When I asked my mother about the double standard, she'd sighed and said, "Lisa needs more support, Sarah. She's not as naturally capable as you. You've always been so independent." Independent. That was the word they used to justify treating me like an ATM with a heartbeat. Even our family photos told the story. I'd noticed it years ago, but it really hit me last Thanksgiving when I was helping my mother organize old albums. In every single picture, Lisa was front and center, perfectly positioned, smiling radiantly, the obvious star of the show. And me, I was either cropped halfway out of the frame, standing awkwardly in the back, or missing entirely because I'd been the one behind the camera. My mother hadn't even noticed. When I pointed it out, she'd laughed it off. "Oh, Sarah, don't be so sensitive. You were never one for photos anyway." The financial exploitation really ramped up once I started making decent money. 3 years ago, Lisa had decided she needed a car, not wanted needed, because taking the bus was embarrassing for someone her age. My parents called me with the plan they'd found a used Honda Accord for $8,000, but they needed $5,000 for the down payment. Could I help? Just this once? They'd pay me back within 6 months, they promised. I transferred the money the next day. That was 3 years ago. I'd never seen a single dollar of it returned. When I'd worked up the courage to mention it last year, my father had actually seemed offended. "We're family, Sarah. You're really going to nickel and dime us. That's the car your sister uses to get to work to contribute to this household." Last year, my parents' 30th wedding anniversary came around. My mother had mentioned wanting to go to this upscale restaurant she'd read about, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list longer than the menu. I'd assumed we'd all chip in, split the cost as a family. But when the check came, $843 for 6 people, my father had simply slid it across the table to me. "You've got this right. Not a question, a statement." Lisa had brought a card she'd probably picked up at CVS for $3.99. But that was how it always worked, wasn't it? Financial crisis. Call Sarah. Broken water heater Sarah. Property tax bill Sarah. Need someone to co-sign a loan? Sarah, obviously. But when my mother wanted emotional support, a shopping companion, someone to laugh with over coffee, that was Lisa's department. When my father wanted to brag about his kids to his friends, he talked about Lisa's social life, her vibrant personality, her Instagram following. I'd spent so many years telling myself this was normal, that this was just what family looked like. Good daughters sacrificed. Good daughters didn't keep score. Good daughters put everyone else's needs before their own because that's what love meant. Somewhere deep in my psychology, I'd convinced myself that if I just gave enough, did enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me. Really see me, maybe even thank me. But gratitude never came. Only more requests. As I drove toward Riverside that Saturday morning, the sun barely up my hands, gripping the steering wheel of my brand new Camry, I felt that cold, hard thing in my chest growing heavier. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. They probably just wanted to discuss insurance paperwork or ask me to add Lisa as an authorized driver. Something minor. Something reasonable. But when I stopped at a red light and absently reached for my keychain to organize my keys, a nervous habit I'd had since college, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The keychain felt wrong. Lighter. I held it up, counting the keys in the morning sunlight streaming through my windshield. House key, office key, mailbox key, and the main car key. The spare key was gone. I'd had it just last weekend when I'd reorganized my purse, I was absolutely certain. But now somehow between then and this moment, it had vanished from my keychain. And my parents wanted to talk about the car. The light turned green, but I sat there for a moment, my heart pounding in my ears, while the driver behind me honked impatiently. Something was very, very wrong. The moment I pulled into my parents' driveway, I knew something was off. Both of them were standing on the front porch waiting for me, which never happened. My mother was wringing her hands, and my father kept glancing at his watch even though I was exactly on time. Neither of them smiled when I got out of the car. "Sarah, good you're here," my father said, his voice artificially bright. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Come inside, we need to discuss something." I followed them into the house, my pulse quickening. The living room felt different somehow, charged with an energy I couldn't name. My mother gestured toward the couch, and I sat noticing how both of them remained standing positioned between me and the front door like guards. "Where's Lisa?" I asked, because her absence was glaring. Saturday morning was her sacred sleep-in time. She was usually sprawled on this very couch in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone until at least noon. "Oh, she's out with friends," my mother said quickly. Too quickly. "Brunch or something." Lisa never did brunch. Lisa barely did breakfast. The lie hung in the air between us, obvious and unexplained. My father cleared his throat. "So about the Camry. We need to borrow it for a few days. Maybe a week. There's an emergency with your mother's sister in Arizona, and our car isn't reliable enough for that kind of drive." I blinked at him. "Aunt Jean, is she okay? What happened?" "Nothing serious," my mother jumped in. "Just some health issues. We need to go help her out, that's all. You understand?" But I didn't understand. Aunt Jean had 3 kids who lived within 20 minutes of her. If there was really an emergency, why would my parents need to drive 6 hours into the desert? And why did they need my car specifically? "Why can't you rent a car?" I asked, my voice careful. "I need mine for work. I have client meetings next week." My father's jaw tightened. "We're trying to save money, Sarah. We thought you'd want to help family." There it was. The familiar guilt trip, the implication that questioning them made me selfish. I felt the old conditioning kick in, the instinct to simply agree to make things easier, to be the good daughter who never caused problems. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I guess I can Uber to work for a few days." The relief on their faces was so palpable it made my stomach turn. My father actually exhaled loudly, and my mother's shoulders dropped from where they'd been tensed up near her ears. "Wonderful," my mother said. "We'll take good care of it. You know we will." But I didn't know that. I didn't know anything anymore. As my father went to grab some paperwork from the kitchen, leaving me alone with my mother, I studied her face. She was 58 years old, and in that moment she looked every year of it. There were lines around her mouth I'd never noticed before, and she couldn't hold my gaze for more than a second at a time. "Mom," I started, but she cut me off. "I need to use the restroom. Make yourself comfortable. There's coffee in the kitchen if you want some." She disappeared down the hallway toward the master bedroom before I could say anything else. My father was still rummaging around somewhere, and the house fell into an eerie quiet. I sat there for a moment, feeling like a stranger in the home I'd grown up in, and then decided I actually did need to use the bathroom. I walked down the familiar hallway past the photos on the wall that featured Lisa's face far more than my own toward the guest bathroom. But as I approached, I heard voices coming from my parents' bedroom. The door was cracked open about 3 inches, and I could see the light from inside spilling into the dim hallway. I should have knocked. I should have announced myself. But something made me freeze in place, my hand hovering near the doorframe. My mother's voice drifted out, and she was on the phone. No, not just on the phone, speakerphone. I could hear the tinny quality of the audio, the slight echo. "So the tickets are definitely booked." That was Lisa's voice, unmistakable, coming through the speaker. "April 28th confirmed." My heart stopped. Tickets. April 28th. "Yes, all set," my father said. He must have come back and gone straight into the bedroom. Hawaiian Airlines direct flight to Maui. The resort looks incredible, Lisa. You're going to have the wedding of your dreams. Wedding. The word hit me like a physical blow. Lisa was getting married. Since when? She'd been dating some guy named Michael for a few months, but she'd never mentioned anything serious, let alone marriage, let alone a wedding in Hawaii. Perfect, Lisa said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. And you got the money figured out. There was a pause. Then my mother spoke, her voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. We'll use Sarah's car money and her account for the flights and gifts. We've already got access to the car, and your father has her banking information from that emergency last year. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself, my breath coming in short, silent gasps. What about Sarah? Lisa asked, and for one insane moment I thought maybe she was going to defend me. Won't she notice? My father laughed. Actually laughed. Here's the plan. We'll tell her we're all going to the wedding together. Get her to the airport with us. Then, once we're through security, we'll ditch her at the gate. Block her number during the trip. By the time she figures it out, we'll already be in Hawaii. No, this couldn't be real. I had to be misunderstanding. But then, Lisa giggled, that high-pitched, delighted giggle she'd had since she was a little girl. Oh my God, that's perfect. She'll be so confused just standing there alone. Can you imagine her face? Lisa, don't be cruel, my mother said, but there was no real reproach in her tone. Sarah will get over it. She always does. She's resilient. And honestly, it's better this way. You don't need her bringing down the energy at your wedding with that serious face of hers. They were all laughing now. All three of them, my entire family, laughing about abandoning me at an airport, stealing my money, excluding me from a wedding I didn't even know was happening. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone as I pulled it from my pocket. But I managed to open the voice recorder app, my fingers moving on autopilot while my brain tried to process what I was hearing. I hit record just as my father started talking again. The car sale should net us about 10 grand, he was saying. Combined with what we can pull from her account, before she notices, we should have enough for everything. The flights, the resort, your dress, the whole package. You're the best parents ever, Lisa cooed. Michael's family is paying for their side, so this way we're even, and Sarah doesn't need a fancy car anyway. She barely goes anywhere except work. The recording was running. Every word, every laugh, every casual dismissal of my existence was being captured in digital permanence. My hands trembled as I held the phone steady, making sure the microphone was pointed toward that cracked door, toward the voices of the people who were supposed to love me. She'll get over it, my mother said again like a mantra. She always does. I stood in that hallway for what felt like an eternity, my phone recording every poisonous word until I heard my mother say, "Okay, sweetie, we'll call you later. Your father needs to finish up with Sarah." I barely made it back to the living room couch before they emerged from the bedroom, both wearing practiced smiles that made my skin crawl. For the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I smiled when my mother called. I laughed at my father's jokes. I played the role of oblivious, devoted Sarah so convincingly that I almost believed it myself. But behind the performance, I was building a case. Every evening after work, I'd sit at my kitchen table with my laptop open, documenting everything. I backed up the recording to 3 different cloud services. I started a spreadsheet tracking every dollar I'd given them over the years. I took screenshots of text messages. I created a timeline. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do with all this evidence, but some instinct told me I'd need it. That's when I noticed the bank account irregularities. I'd been so focused on the big picture that I'd stopped checking my daily transactions. But when I finally pulled up my statement, my stomach dropped. $200 withdrawn at an ATM in Riverside on March 15th. $300 at a different ATM on March 20th. $150 on March 23rd. None of these withdrawals were mine. I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold in my hand. Then I remembered. Last year, when my father's car broke down and he needed cash immediately for the tow truck, he'd asked to borrow my debit card. Just for a few hours, he'd said. He must have memorized the number, or worse, written it down. They'd been stealing from me for weeks, taking amounts small enough that they hoped I wouldn't notice, bleeding me slowly while they planned their grand betrayal. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I called my bank and reported the card as compromised, requesting a new one with a different number. The representative asked if I wanted to dispute the fraudulent charges, and I almost said yes. But then I stopped myself. Let them think they're getting away with it, I thought. Let them get comfortable. On a Tuesday afternoon, my father called. "Hey, Sarah, the Camry needs some repairs. Nothing major, just some maintenance issues the mechanic found. I'm taking it in tomorrow. You can pick it up this weekend." "What kind of repairs?" I asked, my voice steady. "Oh, you know, brake pads, oil change, some sensor thing. I'll text you the details." He never texted me the details. By Saturday, I'd already known something was wrong. My father's vague explanation, the convenient timing, the way my mother had been even more distant than usual when I'd called midweek. But I drove to Riverside anyway, that familiar 2-hour stretch of highway, giving me plenty of time to prepare myself for whatever I was about to find. The driveway was empty. Not just empty of my Camry, but conspicuously so, like a missing tooth. I sat in my Uber for a moment, staring at the vacant space where my car should have been, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. I paid the driver and walked to the front door. My father answered before I could even knock, as if he'd been watching for me through the window. "Where's my car?" I asked. No preamble, no small talk. "Still at the mechanic," he said, but he wouldn't look at me. "Taking longer than expected. Parts got delayed." Which mechanic shop I'll call them and check on the status myself?" His face flushed. "That's not necessary. I'll handle it." I pulled out my phone and opened the DMV website. I'd already checked it this morning, but I wanted to see his reaction when I did it in front of him. I navigated to the vehicle registration lookup, entered my license plate number, and turned the screen toward him. "Title transferred to sold status 3 days ago," I said, my voice unnaturally calm. "So I'll ask you again. Where is my car?" My mother appeared in the hallway behind him, her face pale. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then my father's jaw set in that stubborn way I knew so well. "Technically, my name was on the title," he said, his tone defensive, almost aggressive. "We needed money urgently. Had no choice." "No choice," I repeated. "You had no choice but to sell my car, the car I paid for. The car I've been making insurance payments on." "You're being selfish, Sarah." My mother's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Your sister is getting married. This is her special time. Did you expect us to let her down? To tell her she can't have the wedding she's always dreamed about because you're precious about some car?" I walked past both of them into the house, ignoring my mother's protest. On the kitchen counter, partially hidden under a stack of mail, I saw it. A check already filled out made out to Island Dreams Wedding Resort, in the amount of $12,000. My car converted into my sister's destination wedding. "Lisa's getting married," I said flatly, "and nobody thought to tell me." "We were going to," my mother started, but the lie was so transparent it didn't even warrant a response. I turned away from them and walked down the hallway past the bathroom where I had overheard their conspiracy, past the family photos that had never quite included me properly, and pushed open the door to my old bedroom. It was Lisa's overflow storage, now full of shopping bags and shoeboxes and cosmetics scattered across every surface. I don't know what made me look under the bed. Maybe it was just instinct, or maybe some part of me needed to see the final proof of my exclusion. But there it was, a white binder with gold lettering that read, "Lisa and Michael forever." I pulled it out and flipped it open, my hands surprisingly steady. The pages were filled with Lisa's looping handwriting. Venue details, dress sketches, menu options. And then tabbed with a pink post-it note that said, "Final." I found the guest list. 24 names. Carefully written out with addresses, phone numbers, dietary restrictions. I scanned the list once, then twice, my eyes moving faster, more desperate with each pass. My name wasn't there. Not forgotten, not accidentally left off. Deliberately, conspicuously absent. While every distant cousin, every family friend, every one of my parents' church acquaintances had been carefully documented and invited, there was no line for Sarah Chen. Under the list in Lisa's handwriting was a note that made my vision blur. Keep it intimate. Only people who really matter. I stood there holding that binder, staring at those 24 names that didn't include mine, and something inside me finally shattered. Not broke, shattered. There's a difference. Broken things can be glued back together. Shattered things turn to dust. I thought about my grandmother then. I don't know why she came to mind in that moment, but suddenly I was back in that sterile hospital room 2 months ago, holding her thin, papery hand while machines beeped their steady rhythm around us. Grandma Margaret had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in January. By February, the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. She had weeks, maybe a month if she was lucky. I'd driven to the hospital in Orange County every single day after work, sometimes arriving so late that the nurses gave me sympathetic looks as they bent the visiting hours rules for me. I'd sit beside her bed, read her the books she loved, play her favorite classical music on my phone, help her sip water when her throat was too dry to swallow. My parents came twice. Twice in 6 weeks. They were too busy, they said. My father had work commitments. My mother had her book club and her volunteering at the church. Lisa never came at all. She sent flowers once, an arrangement so generic it could have been for a retirement party, with a card that said, "Thinking of you, Grandma," in printed text, because she hadn't even bothered to handwrite it. Grandma noticed. Of course she noticed. One afternoon, when she was having a good day and her mind was clear and sharp, she squeezed my hand and said, "You're the only one who came, Sarah. The only one who cared enough." "They're busy, Grandma," I'd said, making excuses even then, even for people who'd never made excuses for me. "No," she'd said, her voice firm despite its weakness. "They're selfish. There's a difference. But you have your mother's face, but your grandfather's heart. He would have been so proud of you." On her last day, when the morphine made her drift in and out of consciousness, she pulled me close. Her breath smelled like medicine, and something sweeter, something that might have been the beginning of the end. "Sarah," she whispered, "I've made sure you're taken care of. Check your mailbox in a few months. Everything you need will be there." I'd thought she meant photos, maybe some jewelry, perhaps the recipe cards she'd always promised to pass down to me. Sentimental things, grandmother things. I'd kissed her forehead and told her I loved her, and by morning she was gone. That was 2 months ago. I'd been so consumed with grief, and then with work, and then with my family's escalating demands, that I'd almost forgotten about her words. Almost. Now, standing in my childhood bedroom that wasn't mine anymore, holding evidence of my own family's betrayal, those words came back to me with sudden crystalline clarity. Check your mailbox. Everything you need. I put the binder back exactly where I'd found it, and walked out of that house without another word to my parents. They called after me, their voices a mixture of defensiveness and false concern, but I didn't turn around. I ordered another Uber and waited at the end of the driveway, as far from that house as I could get while still being close enough for the driver to find me. 2 days later, I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when Lisa's face filled my screen. She'd posted a carousel of engagement photos, her and some handsome man I'd never met kissing on a beach at sunset, laughing in front of a restaurant, showing off a diamond ring that must have cost more than my monthly rent. The caption read, "I said yes. Michael, you're my forever. Wedding in Paradise. April 28th. Can't wait to start our lives together. Engaged. Hawaii wedding. Future Anderson." April 28th. 3 weeks away. I did the math backwards. She must have gotten engaged right around the time they were planning to steal my car. Maybe even before. The comments were full of congratulations, heart emojis, excited exclamation points. I scrolled through them looking for any mention of me. Any, "Can't wait to celebrate with your sister," or "Family celebration." Nothing. Because none of her friends even knew I existed. That Saturday evening, I found myself driving to Riverside again, though I didn't fully acknowledge to myself why. I parked down the street from my parents' house just as the sun was setting. The windows glowed warm and golden, and I could see people moving inside, hear the faint sound of music and laughter. An engagement party. Cars lined both sides of the street, relatives I recognized, family friends, even some of my parents' neighbors. I watched through the living room window as Lisa, radiant in a white cocktail dress, hugged person after person. My mother stood beside her, beaming with pride. My father raised a champagne glass in a toast. I sat in my car until my legs went numb, watching my family celebrate without me, and I didn't cry. I was beyond crying. I was in that strange, hollow space past grief where everything feels distant and unreal. The next morning, I checked my bank account out of habit. Another withdrawal. I hadn't authorized $1,500 taken out in 3 separate transactions at different ATMs in Riverside. The card I'd canceled. Except they must have written down the information before I'd canceled. It must have saved it somewhere, and now they were draining what little remained. I called the bank immediately. I reported the card as stolen. Truly stolen this time, not just compromised. I froze the entire account, set up fraud alerts, changed all my passwords and security questions. The representative asked if I wanted to file a police report for identity theft, and I hesitated. These were my parents. But then I remembered that wedding binder, those 24 names, and I said yes. An hour later, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me wanted to hear what he'd say. "How dare you freeze us out?" His voice exploded through the speaker before I could even say hello. "We need that money, Sarah. Your sister's happiness is on the line. What kind of selfish, vindictive person are you?" "The kind who's tired of being stolen from," I said quietly. "Stolen. We're your family. Everything we do is for this family. You have no idea how much we need." I hung up. He called back 4 more times. I didn't answer. That's when I understood. The car money, the bank withdrawals, even the monthly payments I'd been sending for years, none of it was enough. They needed more. Whatever this wedding was costing, whatever debts they'd accumulated, whatever lifestyle they'd been maintaining on my dime, it had all caught up with them. They weren't just greedy. They were desperate. That evening, as I sat on my couch with a glass of wine, I couldn't taste there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find my building manager holding a large manila envelope. "This came for you, certified mail," he said. "Needed a signature, but you weren't home earlier. Important looking." The return address read, Henderson and Associates Law Firm. Nice. The subject line, printed in stark black letters across the front, made my heart stop. Re-estate of Margaret Chen. Urgent, last will and testament. My hands shook as I closed the door and carried the envelope to my kitchen table. For a moment I just stared at it, this innocuous manila rectangle that somehow felt heavy with consequence. Then I tore it open. The letterhead was pristine, professional Henderson and Associates attorneys at law with an Orange County address. The letter itself was typed on heavy cream paper dated 3 days ago. "Dear Ms. Chen," it began, "I am writing to inform you that your grandmother, Margaret Louise Chen, named you as the sole beneficiary of her entire estate. As the executor of her will, it is my duty to ensure her final wishes are carried out according to the legal documents she prepared with our firm." I had to read that sentence 3 times before the words actually registered. Sole beneficiary, entire estate. The letter continued in that formal legal language, but certain phrases jumped out at me like they were written in neon. House located at 2847 Maple Drive, Tustin, California. Appraised value $485,000, mortgage paid in full. Savings accounts totaling $67,000. investment portfolio valued at approximately $288,000. The numbers swam before my eyes. I did the math twice then, a third time, convinced I was adding wrong. $340,000. My grandmother had left me $340,000. The will was legally notarized on February 10th, 2 weeks before Mrs. Chen's passing, the letter explained. I maintain the only official copy in our secure files. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to begin the probate process. February 10th. I remembered that day. I'd arrived at the hospital to find Grandma more alert than she'd been in days. She'd told me she had some business to take care of and asked me to wait in the cafeteria for an hour. When I came back, she'd been tired but peaceful, and she'd squeezed my hand and said, "It's done. You're safe now." I'd thought she meant she'd made peace with dying. I hadn't realized she meant she'd made peace with protecting me. At the bottom of the letter, paper-clipped separately, was a handwritten note on floral stationery. I recognized my grandmother's elegant cursive immediately, and my vision blurred with tears before I even started reading. "My dearest Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, I've gone to be with your grandfather and I'm at peace. I'm writing this from my hospital bed with Mr. Henderson as my witness because I need you to understand why I've done what I've done. I've watched your parents take from you your entire life. I've watched them favor your sister, diminish your accomplishments, and treat you like a bank account instead of a daughter. It broke my heart every time. Your grandfather and I worked hard for what we built, and I will not let it be squandered on people who don't know the meaning of gratitude. This inheritance is not just money, my darling girl. It's freedom. It's proof that someone saw your worth when others refused to. Use it to build a life that honors you. Don't waste one more moment trying to earn love from people who are incapable of giving it. You deserve so much more than they could ever offer. I'm so very proud of you. With all my love, Grandma Margaret." I pressed the letter to my chest and let myself cry for the first time since this nightmare began. Not tears of sadness, but of something more complicated: grief and gratitude and a fierce protective love for a woman who'd saved me even in death. Then I stopped crying and started thinking. The timeline suddenly made horrible sense. My grandmother died February 26th. My parents would have gone through her house immediately afterward looking for valuables, important documents, things to claim. They must have found a draft copy of the will, something Grandma had been working on before she finalized it with Mr. Henderson. They would have seen that everything was going to me, and they would have panicked. That's when the plan started forming. They needed money, and they needed it fast. Not just to fund Lisa's Hawaiian wedding, though that was part of it. They needed to hire their own lawyer to try to contest the will. They needed to create a narrative that I was financially irresponsible, unstable, unworthy of such a large inheritance. What better way than to paint me as someone who couldn't even manage her own car, her own bank account, someone who needed their help to function, and the airport plan leaving me stranded, blocking my number that bought them time. Time to file legal challenges. Time to spread their version of events to relatives and family friends. Time to isolate me so thoroughly that when the will was revealed, they'd already poisoned everyone against me. It was actually brilliant in a sick, twisted way. If I hadn't overheard that phone call, if I hadn't recorded their conspiracy, I might never have put it all together until it was too late. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on Mr. Henderson's letterhead. He answered on the third ring, his voice warm and professional. "Mr. Henderson, this is Sarah Chen. I received your letter about my grandmother's estate." "Ms. Chen, I'm so glad you called. I've been expecting to hear from you. Your grandmother spoke of you often. She was very clear about her wishes." "I need to know something," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can this will be contested? Is there any way my parents could challenge it?" There was a pause. "May I ask why you're concerned about that?" "Because I think they're going to try." He sighed, a sound that suggested he'd seen this scenario before. "Ms. Chen, your grandmother was of completely sound mind when she executed this will. I have medical documentation to that effect. She made her intentions crystal clear, and she specifically stated that she was choosing to leave everything to you, excluding other family members for reasons she documented. The will is ironclad. Even if someone tried to contest it, they would fail and they would waste a great deal of money on legal fees in the process. So I'm protected. Completely. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat very still in my quiet apartment, feeling something shift inside me. The hurt daughter, the one who'd spent 35 years begging for scraps of approval, was gone. In her place was someone harder, clearer, more focused. I thought about my parents' plan. The wedding on April 28th, the airport betrayal, the stolen money, the casual cruelty. They thought they were playing me. They thought I was weak. They had no idea what was coming. I opened my laptop and created a new document. I titled it, Project Freedom, Timeline and Evidence. Then I began typing methodical and precise, documenting everything. The recording from 2 weeks ago, the unauthorized bank withdrawals, the car sale, the wedding binder with my name conspicuously absent, the inheritance they didn't know I knew about. I would let them continue with their plan. I would let them think they were winning. I would let them dig their hole so deep that when they finally hit bottom, the impact would destroy them. Revenge, I decided, would be served cold legally and absolutely devastating. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur of calculated normalcy. I went to work, attended meetings, smiled at colleagues, and acted like my world hadn't completely inverted. But every evening I sat at my kitchen table updating my Project Freedom document, adding details, organizing evidence, and planning my next moves with a precision that surprised even me. April 27th arrived faster than I expected, the night before Lisa's wedding, the night before my family planned to betray me at LAX and fly to paradise on my stolen money. I should have stayed home, should have avoided any chance of my resolve weakening. But some part of me needed to see it one last time, the family I was about to leave behind forever. I drove to Riverside just as the sun was setting, that golden California light, making everything look softer than it really was. From a block away, I could already see the cars lining both sides of the street outside my parents' house. The driveway was full, the lawn decorated with white balloons and streamers, and through the large front window I could see people moving, laughing, celebrating. I parked across the street 3 houses down and killed the engine. Then I just sat there watching. A catering van was parked in front, and I watched uniformed workers carry trays of food inside. This wasn't just a small family gathering. This was an event. They'd spent thousands on this party alone, and I knew exactly where that money had come from. The window was open, one of those warm April evenings where you don't need air conditioning yet. I could hear music, voices, the clink of glasses. I got out of my car and walked closer, staying in the shadows of the neighbor's jacaranda tree, close enough to hear, but not be seen. My father's voice carried through the window, loud and jovial, in that way he got after a few drinks. A toast to Lisa and Michael May, your marriage be filled with joy, prosperity, and none of the headaches. Laughter erupted. Then my mother's voice. Thank God we don't have to deal with Sarah tomorrow. Can you imagine? She'd probably show up in some dowdy pantsuit and spend the whole time talking about spreadsheets? More laughter. My stomach clenched, but I stayed perfectly still. Then Lisa's voice, high and animated, probably addressing her bridesmaids. Honestly, you guys, my sister is so boring and jealous. She's been bitter her whole life because she knows she'll never be as happy as me. I'm actually glad she's not here. She'd just bring down the whole vibe with her judgmental face. Lisa, don't be mean, someone said, but it was half-hearted already, followed by giggles. My mother again. Well, we raised one daughter right, at least. One who knows how to enjoy life, how to let people love her. Sarah always made everything so difficult. I stood there under that jacaranda tree, petals falling around me like purple snow, and I felt the last thread of connection to these people snap. Not break, snap. Clean and final. They weren't talking about a difficult relative or a black sheep. They were talking about a stranger they held in contempt, someone whose only value had been financial, and who they were genuinely relieved to be rid of. I walked back to my car and drove home. I didn't cry. I was done crying over people who saw me as a burden. Back in my apartment, I pulled out my laptop and booked a flight. Hawaiian Airlines just like theirs, but departing 3 hours earlier. First class this time, because I could afford it now and because I deserved it. A window seat on a direct flight to Maui. I'd arrive in paradise while they were still waiting at their gate, wondering why their tickets weren't working. Then I pulled out a small carry-on suitcase and began packing with surgical precision. My phone with the recording backed up in multiple locations. Printed copies of my bank statements showing every unauthorized withdrawal, each one highlighted in yellow. The letter from Mr. Henderson about the inheritance along with a copy of the will. My grandmother's handwritten note sealed in a plastic sleeve to protect it. A change of clothes, sunscreen, and the jade bracelet my grandmother had left me, the one I'd found in the box with her letter. I sat at my computer and drafted emails to my aunt, my cousins, even some of my parents' church friends, people who deserved to know the truth. I attached the audio recording, the bank statements, everything. Then I scheduled them to send automatically at 2 p.m. the next day, right around the time my family would be realizing something had gone very, very wrong with their plan. The last thing I did was log into the joint savings account, the one my parents had insisted on opening 5 years ago for emergencies. My name was on it legally equally with theirs. There was $8,000 in it, money I'd deposited over time that they'd never touched because they'd been bleeding my personal account instead. I transferred every cent to my new bank account, the one they didn't know existed. It was perfectly legal. It was my money, and I knew they'd been counting on it as a backup fund for wedding expenses. When everything was ready, I walked to my bookshelf and pulled down an old photo album. I sat on my couch and flipped through pictures of a childhood I'd tried so hard to remember fondly. Every photo told the same story, Lisa in the center beaming. Me on the edges trying to smile, trying to belong. In one photo from my high school graduation, Lisa was making a silly face at the camera while I stood stiffly in my cap and gown, and my parents were looking at her. Not at me, even on my day. I remembered something my mother had said when I was 16. I'd won a scholarship competition, $5,000 for academic excellence. I'd been so proud, so excited to tell them. My mother had looked up from her magazine and said, "That's nice, Sarah. At least you're good for something. God knows you're not easy to love like your sister is. You're just a burden we have to carry." I'd told myself for years that she hadn't meant it, that she'd been having a bad day, that I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't misunderstood. That was how she really saw me. That was how they all saw me. I closed the photo album and put it in a box labeled "Donate." I wouldn't be needing it anymore. They chose to hurt me, I thought, standing in my quiet apartment looking at my packed suitcase and my organized evidence and my one-way ticket to freedom. They chose to steal from me, mock me, exclude me, and abandon me. Now they'll learn what it costs to lose me. Not because I'm vindictive, but because I finally understand my own worth. And it's worth so much more than they ever gave me credit for. There were no tears, no last-minute doubts, just cold, crystalline determination, and the certain knowledge that I was doing the right thing. I zipped my suitcase closed, set it by the door, and checked my flight information one more time. Then my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my father. "Sarah, we need you to drive us to airport tomorrow, 6 a.m. Your sister deserves this. Be a good sister for once." I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Of course. I'll be there." And I would be. Just not in the way they expected. I barely slept that night. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation. By 5:30 a.m., I was already dressed in comfortable jeans and a lightweight sweater, my small carry-on by the door, my real plans hidden behind a mask of compliance I'd spent 35 years perfecting. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6 a.m. The sun was just starting to brighten the sky, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. I knocked once and let myself in with the key I'd never returned, calling out, "It's me, ready when you are." The house was absolute chaos. Suitcases lined the hallway, garment bags draped over every available surface. I could smell coffee brewing, and something sweet pastries, Maybe from the fancy bakery downtown. My mother rushed past me without so much as a hello barking orders into her phone about confirming the resort shuttle service. In the living room, Lisa sat in front of a portable makeup station, a professional artist working on her face with the concentration of a surgeon. My sister wore a white silk robe with bride embroidered across the back in gold thread, and her hair was already styled in elaborate curls. She looked beautiful, I had to admit. Radiant, even. She caught my eye in the mirror, and her expression flickered surprise, maybe that I'd actually shown up before settling into something practiced and false. "Sarah," she said, her tone flat. "You came." "Of course I came," I said warmly, walking over to stand behind her. "You look absolutely beautiful, Lisa. I'm so happy for you." The makeup artist smiled at me. Lisa's mouth curved upward, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks, sis." She barely glanced at me before turning her attention back to her reflection, dismissing me as effectively as if I'd never spoken. I noticed my parents then emerging from their bedroom. My father wore a linen suit that looked brand new, still crisp with store creases. My mother had on an elegant coral dress with matching shoes, a pearl necklace I'd never seen before gleaming at her throat. I did quick mental math. That outfit alone probably cost $800. My $800 most likely withdrawn from my account in careful increments, so I wouldn't notice all at once. Neither of them would look directly at me. My father busied himself with checking luggage tags. My mother fussed with the pastry arrangement on the kitchen counter. Guilt. I wondered, or just eager anticipation of leaving me stranded in a few hours. Then I heard voices from the backyard and looked out to see two people I didn't recognize. A handsome man about 30 in expensive casual clothes, and an older couple who radiated the kind of understated wealth that comes from generations of money. The man had to be Michael, and these were clearly his parents. "Sarah." My mother's voice was suddenly bright performative. "Come meet Michael's parents. They're riding with us to the airport." Michael's mother, Mrs. Anderson, was elegant in her early 60s, with silver hair cut in a sleek bob and kind eyes. She extended her hand to me warmly. "You must be Sarah. We've heard so much about you." That was a lie. I could tell from the way Lisa tensed when Mrs. Anderson said it, but I shook her hand and smiled. "It's lovely to meet you both. This is such an exciting day." "Your sister is lucky to have such a supportive family," Mrs. Anderson said, and there was genuine warmth in her voice that made something ache in my chest. This was what a real mother sounded like. 20 minutes later, we were loading into my rental car. I'd turned in my original rental and gotten a larger SUV specifically for this trip. I'd volunteered to drive, playing the helpful older sister role to perfection. Michael and Lisa sat in the third row, his parents in the middle, my parents in the passenger seats beside me. 7 people and enough luggage for a month, all funded by money they'd stolen from me. As I navigated toward the freeway, the car filled with excited chatter. Michael's father talked about the snorkeling spots he'd researched. My mother described the resort's famous luau. Lisa showed Mrs. Anderson photos of her wedding dress on her phone. They discussed dinner reservations and spa appointments and sunset cruises, painting a picture of paradise that none of them had actually paid for. I waited until we were on the 405 traffic flowing smoothly before asking in my most innocent voice, "Dad, what time is my flight confirmation again? I want to make sure I know which terminal." There was the briefest pause. Then my father cleared his throat. "Oh, we'll text you all the details once we get there. Don't worry about it." "It's just so wonderful that the whole family is going," Mrs. Anderson said from behind me. I could see her in the rearview mirror smiling. "Sarah, you must be so proud. Lisa mentioned you helped make this trip possible." My mother made a small choking sound. Lisa suddenly became very interested in her phone. My father stared straight ahead through the windshield. "I'm just happy I could contribute to my sister's happiness," I said, my voice steady and sweet. "Family is everything, isn't it?" "It certainly is," Mrs. Anderson agreed. Her husband murmured his assent. The rest of the drive passed in a blur of small talk that I barely registered. I was too focused on timing on executing my plan perfectly, on watching my family's faces in the rearview mirror as they congratulated themselves on their cleverness. They thought they'd won. They thought I was driving them to their dream vacation while I got left behind like forgotten luggage. As I took the exit for LAX following the signs for departures, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. A notification lit up the screen just long enough for me to read it. Bank alert, transaction declined. Insufficient funds. I glanced at the notification and allowed myself the smallest smile. In the passenger seat, my father's phone buzzed at almost the same moment. I watched his face in my peripheral vision as he pulled it out and looked at the screen. The color drained from his cheeks so fast he looked like he might faint. His mouth opened, then closed. His fingers trembled as he stared at his phone. The joint account. He'd been counting on it, probably planned to use it to cover some last-minute expense at the resort. But there was nothing left in it now. Not a single cent. "Everything okay, Dad?" I asked pleasantly, pulling up to the departures curb. He didn't answer. He just sat there, pale and sweating, staring at his phone like it had betrayed him. "We're here," I announced brightly, putting the car in park. "Let me help everyone with their luggage." I helped unload suitcase after suitcase from the back of the SUV, playing my role perfectly. Michael and his father grabbed the heaviest bags while I handed lighter ones to my mother and Mrs. Anderson. Lisa stood to the side checking her phone, her white silk robe now covered by a designer tracksuit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. My father still looked pale, but he was trying to compose himself, straightening his collar and avoiding my gaze. "Which airline, Mrs.?" Anderson asked cheerfully, pulling her own small rolling bag behind her. "Hawaiian Airlines," my mother said. "Terminal 2, I believe." We made our way through the automatic doors into the bustling terminal. It was barely 7 a.m., but LAX was already packed with travelers. Families with children, business people rushing with coffee cups, elderly couples moving slowly with careful steps. The energy was chaotic, but somehow organized, everyone flowing toward their destinations like water finding its path. At the Hawaiian Airlines check-in counter, my family lined up with their tickets pulled up on phones and confirmation numbers ready. I stood slightly apart, still playing the helpful sister, ready to watch their luggage while they checked in. That's when my father touched my elbow and gently pulled me aside a few steps away from the others. "Actually, we need to talk." He started, his voice low. His eyes darted nervously between me and the check-in counter. But before he could continue, my mother appeared at his side, her face set in that determined expression I knew so well. "Sarah, honey," she said, her voice loud enough that several people nearby turned to look. "We need to tell you something. We couldn't afford a ticket for you. The wedding costs were just so much more than we expected. But don't worry, we'll take lots of photos and send them to you." The words hung in the air between us. I watched Michael, who'd been standing a few feet away, freeze mid-conversation with the ticket agent. His eyes widened, and he looked at me, then at my mother, confusion and discomfort written all over his face. Lisa walked over, not a trace of guilt or apology in her expression. "You understand, right?" she said as casually as if she were telling me she'd finished the last of the milk. "It's my day. I need people there who are actually fun and supportive, not—" She waved her hand vaguely at me. "Whatever mood you'd bring." "What, Mrs.?" Anderson's voice cut through the terminal noise like a knife. She'd been standing with her husband near the baggage scale, but now she walked over to us, her elegant face sharp with confusion. "What do you mean she's not coming? Sarah, you're not going to your sister's wedding." My mother's voice got even louder, projecting now to the growing number of people who'd stopped to watch this family drama unfold. "Sarah is too busy with work. She chose not to come. We begged her, but you know how she is always putting her career first. We're very disappointed in her." I felt eyes on us from every direction. The ticket agent had stopped typing. A family with 3 small children had paused their own check-in to stare. An elderly man with a veteran's cap shook his head disapprovingly in my direction. The lie was being broadcast to dozens of strangers, and I was being cast as the selfish sister who couldn't be bothered to attend her own sibling's wedding. I let my eyes water. It wasn't hard. The humiliation was real, even if I'd known it was coming. The hurt of standing in a crowded airport while my mother lied about me to strangers, while my sister looked at me with contempt, while my father said nothing in my defense. Tears blurred my vision, and I blinked them back, letting a few fall. "It's okay," I said, my voice small and wounded, exactly what they expected to hear. "I understand. Have a wonderful time. I hope it's everything you dreamed of, Lisa." Lisa smiled, vindicated. My mother's expression was triumphant. My father finally looked at me, and I saw something that might have been guilt flicker across his face before he looked away. "Come here, sis," Lisa said, opening her arms for a hug. "No hard feelings, right?" I walked into her embrace, and she squeezed me briefly perfunctorily, already pulling away before I was ready. But I held on for just a moment longer, leaning close to her ear. "I'll always remember this moment," I whispered so quietly only she could hear. She pulled back, gave me an odd look, then shrugged and turned away toward Michael. While everyone's attention was on getting their boarding passes printed and organizing their luggage, I moved closer to my mother. She was digging through her oversized purse for her ID, muttering about always losing it in the bottom. I pulled the folded document from my jacket pocket, a printed copy of the bank fraud report I'd filed, complete with case number and a list of every unauthorized transaction, and slipped it deep into the inside pocket of her purse. She'd find it eventually, maybe on the plane, maybe at the resort. But she'd find it. "Well," I said, raising my voice to Carrie, "I should get going. Don't want to hold you all up. Have an amazing trip." Mrs. Anderson came over and hugged me, her embrace warm and genuine in a way my own mothers never were. "I'm so sorry you can't join us, dear," she said quietly. "For what it's worth, I think any sister would be lucky to have you there." "Thank you," I whispered back and meant it. I waved at the group, my father still pale, my mother already focused on the ticket agent Lisa taking selfies with Michael, his parents looking somewhat uncomfortable with what they'd just witnessed. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, pulling my small carry-on behind me, my shoulders slightly hunched as if in defeat. I could feel their eyes on my back, probably feeling some mixture of relief and satisfaction. The burden of Sarah finally shed. They could go to paradise without the boring, jealous older sister dragging down their good time. I kept walking past the Hawaiian Airlines counters, past the baggage claim area, following the signs. But I didn't go toward the parking garage like they assumed I would. Instead, I followed the signs for interterminal transport, took the shuttle to Terminal 5, and walked through the automatic doors into the Delta terminal. The energy here felt different, or maybe I felt different. Lighter, freer. I walked straight to the first-class check-in counter where a friendly agent greeted me with a smile. "Checking in for the 9 a.m. flight to Maui," I said, handing over my ID. "Perfect," she said, typing rapidly. "Seat 2A, Ms. Chen, right side window. You'll be boarding in about 45 minutes. I thanked her and made my way through security, which was mercifully quick with TSA pre-check. Once I was through, I found a quiet corner near my gate, pulled out my phone, and opened my messages. I typed quickly, "Execute Phase 2 now." Then I hit send, watching the message deliver to Mr. Henderson, my grandmother's attorney who'd been waiting for my signal. In exactly 30 minutes, my flight would take off. And about an hour after that, my family would discover that their tickets didn't work. Their cards were declined and their perfect plan had imploded spectacularly. I ordered a coffee, found a seat with a view of the tarmac, and waited for my boarding call. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely, perfectly calm. I couldn't see them from where I sat in the Delta terminal, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was happening 2 terminals away, could picture it so clearly, it was almost like watching a movie in my mind. The timeline was precise, calculated down to the minute. By now, they would have finished saying goodbye to poor, pathetic Sarah. They'd be feeling victorious, maybe even a little giddy with their success. My father would have pushed down his worry about that bank alert, convincing himself it was just a glitch. And they'd be approaching the ticket counter boarding passes, ready on their phones, ready to begin their Hawaiian adventure on my dime. Except it wasn't going to work that way. I sipped my coffee and checked my watch. 7:45. Right about now, the ticket agent would be scanning their boarding passes and everything would be falling apart. I imagined my father stepping up first, always the one to handle logistics. He'd hold out his phone confidently, let the agent scan the barcode. I could picture the agent's screen, the way her expression would shift from routine professionalism to confusion, then concern. "I'm sorry," she'd say, probably checking her screen twice to make sure. "These tickets have been canceled." My father's response would be immediate, indignant. "What? That's impossible. I have the confirmation email right here." He'd be scrolling frantically through his phone, pulling up the original booking confirmation, showing her the reference number, the dates, everything. The agent would type some more click-through screens, then deliver the blow that would make his world tilt. "The card used for purchase has disputed the charges. The transaction has been reversed. These tickets are no longer valid." I pictured him going very still, the way he always did when processing bad news. Then he'd be checking his email right there at the counter while other passengers waited behind them. And Lisa started to realize something was very wrong. The email from the bank would be time-stamped from 3 days ago, sitting in his inbox, where he'd somehow missed it among all the wedding planning chaos. "Fraud alert reported stolen card. All recent transactions have been reversed pending investigation. Contact us immediately to resolve this matter." My mother would lean over to read it, her face going from confusion to understanding to rage in the span of seconds. "Sarah," she'd say, her voice flat with realization. "She reported the card stolen." And she'd be right. The card they'd been using, the one my father had memorized the number from last year, I'd reported it as stolen 2 weeks ago. Every transaction made after that report, including their Hawaiian Airlines tickets, would be flagged as fraudulent and reversed. Lisa's voice would rise first, panic overriding any attempt at composure. "We'll miss the wedding. Michael, do something. Call someone. Fix this." But Michael, standing there with his wealthy, well-connected parents, would be putting pieces together that didn't add up. I could imagine the expression on his face, confusion giving way to something darker. "Wait," he'd say, his voice careful, controlled in that way finance professionals have when they spot irregularities in a ledger. Why was the wedding on her card if she wasn't even invited? The question would hang there in the air unanswerable, because there was no good answer, no explanation that didn't reveal exactly what they'd done. Mrs. Anderson, elegant and perceptive, would be watching this all unfold with growing concern. She'd pull Michael aside, away from the chaos at the ticket counter, her hand on his arm in that protective way mothers touch their children regardless of age. "Something isn't right here," she'd say quietly, and that's when she'd hear it. Because my parents in their panic and rage wouldn't think to lower their voices. My father's words would carry across the terminal, "That ungrateful brat, after everything we gave her, after we raised her, fed her, put a roof over her head." My mother would join in, years of resentment spilling out. "She's always been jealous of Lisa. This is revenge because she's miserable and alone." Mrs. Anderson would hear every word. I knew her type, wealthy, educated, with that particular radar that comes from decades of navigating social situations and spotting pretense. She'd look at Michael, really look at him, and ask the question that would make him see everything clearly. "Michael, did they steal from Sarah to pay for this wedding?" It would be the first time he'd let himself think it so directly. But once the question was asked, all the little inconsistencies would start making sense. Lisa's vague non-answers whenever he asked about wedding finances. Her insistence that her parents were handling everything while never providing details. The way she'd changed the subject when he'd offered to have his parents contribute more. The nervous energy that had surrounded every discussion of money. He'd stand there in LAX his wedding day, surrounded by canceled tickets, and his fiancée's family melting down in public, and he'd finally see what he'd been too in love, too trusting, or too naive to see before. My father would be on his phone now, frantically calling credit card companies, trying to explain, trying to reverse the reversal, his voice getting louder and more desperate with each failed attempt. My mother would be calling me my number, going straight to voicemail because I'd silenced my phone. Lisa would be crying, her carefully applied makeup starting to run her white tracksuit, somehow looking less pristine under the fluorescent terminal lights. And Michael, standing slightly apart with his phone in his hand, would be making a decision that would change everything. I checked my watch again. 7:55. My boarding would begin in 10 minutes. From my seat in the Delta terminal, I pulled out my own phone and opened it to the voicemail screen. Sure enough, there were already 5 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, 2 from Lisa. I didn't listen to them. I didn't need to hear the progression from demanding to, desperate to furious. I'd lived with those voices my entire life. Instead, I opened my email and saw the confirmation from Mr. Henderson. Phase 2 executed. Probate filing submitted. Will is now public record. Estate cannot be contested or delayed. You are protected. I smiled and put my phone away just as the gate agent's voice came over the speaker. We'd like to begin boarding for our 9 a.m. service to Kahului, Maui. First-class passengers and those needing additional time, please approach the gate. I stood, gathered my carry-on, and walked toward the gate agent, who scanned my boarding pass with a cheerful, "Have a wonderful flight, Ms. Chen." Behind me, 2 terminals away, Michael would be pressing his phone to his ear, waiting for his father to answer. And when that prominent attorney picked up, Michael would say the words that would seal my family's fate. "Dad, I need advice. I think I'm about to marry into a family of thieves." I settled into seat 2A, the leather soft and comfortable, and watched through the window as ground crew prepared the plane for departure. A flight attendant came by offering orange juice or champagne, and I chose champagne because this was a celebration, even if I was the only one who knew it yet. The cabin filled slowly with other first-class passengers, business travelers in expensive suits, a couple who looked like they were heading to their honeymoon. An older woman with kind eyes who smiled at me as she took the seat across the aisle. I could only imagine what was happening back at Terminal 2, but I knew my family well enough to script it with uncomfortable accuracy. My father would be desperately trying to salvage the situation, the only way he knew how, by throwing money at it. He'd pull out his credit card, march back up to that ticket counter, and demand to purchase new tickets immediately. The agent would process it, wait for approval, and then shake her head apologetically. Declined. He'd pull out another card, declined. A third card, his business card, the one he used for emergencies, declined. Because I'd reported every single one as stolen after I'd discovered they'd all been used to drain my accounts over the past months. Every card linked to transactions that had touched my money was now flagged in the banking system. My mother would be frantically dialing my number, probably already on her 15th attempt. Each call would go straight to a message that I'd blocked her number. She'd try texting and those messages would disappear into the void, never delivered, never read. The desperation would be building with each failed attempt to reach me, the realization settling in that I wasn't going to answer, wasn't going to save them, wasn't going to be their solution anymore. And Lisa, my baby sister, the golden child, would be having the meltdown of her life. I could picture her mascara running in dark streams down her carefully made-up face, her white tracksuit probably stained with tears, her voice rising to that hysterical pitch she'd used since childhood when things didn't go her way. Wedding guests were already in Hawaii, probably at the resort, getting ready for a ceremony that was scheduled to start in less than 4 hours. The flowers were arranged, the cake was waiting, the photographer was on standby, and the bride was stuck at LAX with no way to get there. Airport security would be approaching them now, drawn by the commotion. When people start screaming in an airport terminal, when voices rise and hands gesture wildly, security notices. An officer would be asking them to lower their voices, to move away from the ticket counter to stop disturbing other passengers. The humiliation would be complete. The public meltdown they'd orchestrated for me was now happening to them, but so much worse. That's when they'd turn on each other, because that's what happens when people who've conspired together suddenly face consequences. They look for someone else to blame. My father's voice would crack with rage and fear. "This is your idea. You said Sarah would never fight back. You said she was too weak, too desperate for our approval. My mother would deflect immediately, her own panic making her cruel. If you hadn't agreed to Lisa's expensive wedding, a destination wedding in Hawaii, who needs that? We could have done something simple, something we could actually afford. And Lisa, spoiled Lisa, who'd never been told no in her entire life, would scream at both of them. Her voice raw with betrayal. You promised this would work. You told me Sarah was stupid and weak. You said we could use her money and she'd never do anything about it because she's too pathetic to stand up for herself. Michael would be standing there, probably 10 feet back from this implosion, listening to every word. His face would be hardening with each revelation, each admission of their plan, each casual dismissal of their theft and betrayal as if it were nothing. The woman he'd planned to marry was calling her own sister stupid and weak. Her parents had stolen from their daughter to fund a wedding. And he was hearing all of it in a public terminal surrounded by witnesses. The bridesmaids would be seeing it too, but from thousands of miles away. I knew Lisa had at least 2 of them who'd flown out early to help set up Stephanie and Jenna, her college friends, who'd probably never heard a single kind word about me. They'd be on FaceTime right now watching this disaster unfold in real time, their phones propped up so Lisa could cry to them. And because they were in their late 20s and lived on social media, they'd be recording this, posting cryptic messages, unable to resist sharing the drama. Wedding drama at airport? Stephanie would type, probably adding some wide-eyed emoji for emphasis. The post would go up on Instagram, on TikTok, in their friend group chats. The wedding guests in Hawaii would be in their own group chat, getting increasingly concerned. 50 people had traveled to Maui for this wedding, had paid for flights and hotels and taken time off work. The messages would be flying, "Where's the bride? Is everything okay? Ceremony starts in 4 hours, are they still coming?" The resort coordinator would be calling my mother's phone, professional but concerned. "Mrs. Chen, this is Alana from Island Dreams Resort. I wanted to confirm the ceremony timing. We have everything ready, but we haven't heard from the bride and groom. The ceremony is scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. Hawaii time. That's in less than 4 hours. Is there any delay we should know about?" My mother wouldn't be able to answer that call. She'd be too busy yelling at my father, at Lisa, at anyone but herself. I looked at my watch. 8:15. My flight would be pushing back from the gate in 10 minutes. I'd be in the air before they even figured out what to do next. The flight attendant came by again, checking that my seatbelt was fastened, asking if I needed anything else. "I'm perfect," I told her, and meant it. My phone, which I'd set to allow only specific numbers through, suddenly buzzed with an incoming call. I looked at the screen. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I opened it. "Ms. Chen, this is Mrs. Anderson, Michael's mother. I believe we need to talk about what's happening with your family. I'm at Delta Terminal C. Would you be willing to meet before your flight?" I stared at that message for a long moment, then typed back. "I'm already checked in and boarding soon. Gate C7 if you'd like to come to me." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "On my way." Back at Terminal 2. Michael's phone would be ringing. He'd look down, see his mother's name, and answer with relief. Someone reasonable, someone who could help make sense of this nightmare. "Mom? Son." Mrs. Anderson's voice would be firm, that particular tone of a mother who's made a decision and won't be argued with. "I need you to come to Delta Terminal C right now. Gate C7. There's someone here you need to meet." Mrs. Anderson arrived at my gate 7 minutes later, slightly out of breath, her elegant composure intact, despite the speed at which she must have walked through the terminal. I stood as she approached, and she took both my hands in hers, studying my face with an intensity that felt almost maternal. "Sarah," she said quietly, "I think I've just witnessed something very disturbing. Before I make any judgments, I need to hear your side of this story." I glanced at the gate agent who was making pre-boarding announcements. "I have maybe 5 minutes before they call my section." "Then talk fast, dear." So I did. I gave her the abbreviated version, the overheard phone call, the stolen car, the drained bank accounts, the plan to abandon me at the airport, the wedding I'd never been invited to despite funding it. I showed her the recording on my phone, let her listen to 30 seconds of my family laughing about leaving me stranded. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. "My God," she whispered. "Michael has no idea who he's marrying." "No," I agreed. "He doesn't." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to get on this plane, go to Hawaii, and start my life over. What Michael does with this information is up to him." She squeezed my hands once more. "Your grandmother would be very proud of you. I can tell." Then she released me and stepped back. "Go, be free. I'll handle things here." I boarded the plane as they called first class, found my seat, and immediately switched my phone to airplane mode. But not before I saw the notification count climbing rapidly. 23 missed calls in just 15 minutes. The desperation must have been overwhelming back at Terminal 2. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity got the better of me. Before the flight attendant could tell me to put my phone away, I quickly opened my voicemail and scrolled through the list. I didn't listen to them. I didn't need to hear their voices, but I could see the timestamps and the increasing frequency. The first voicemail, 7:58 a.m., was from my father. I could see it was 23 seconds long. I imagined his voice clipped and furious. "Answer your phone now! This isn't funny, Sarah. Call me back immediately." By the fifth voicemail, 8:04 a.m., my mother's tone would have shifted. 41 seconds. I could hear it in my mind, that pleading quality she used when she needed something. "Sarah, honey, please, I know you're upset, but we can fix this. Just call us back. We can work this out. Please, sweetheart, your sister needs you." The 15th voicemail, 8:12 a.m., was from Lisa. 1 minute and 17 seconds of what I knew would be sobbing hysteria. "You're ruining my life. This is my wedding day. How can you be so cruel? I'm your sister. Everyone is waiting for me in Hawaii, and you're doing this because you're jealous. You've always been jealous. Call Mom back right now." I deleted them all without listening. Then I switched my phone to airplane mode and tucked it into my purse. But the calls hadn't just been from my immediate family. As the plane finished boarding and the flight attendants began their safety demonstration, I noticed my phone had lit up one last time before airplane mode fully kicked in. My aunt, my mother's sister Jennifer, had called twice. My cousin Emily had sent 3 text messages. Even my Uncle Robert, who I hadn't heard from in 2 years, had tried to reach me. I could imagine the narrative my mother was spinning. She'd be calling relatives in tears, playing the victim, painting me as the villain. Sarah abandoned Lisa on her wedding day. She sabotaged everything out of jealousy. We don't know what's wrong with her. She's having some kind of breakdown. The family group chat that I'd been removed from months ago, ostensibly because my mother said it was too overwhelming for me, but really because they didn't want me seeing their conversations, would be blowing up right now. My cousin Emily, the only one who'd ever treated me like an actual human being, had found a way to forward me screenshots before. She'd done it again. I'd seen 3 images come through just before airplane mode engaged. "Did anyone hear from Sarah?" one aunt had written. "Michelle says Sarah deliberately ruined Lisa's wedding," another relative replied. "Reported their credit cards as stolen so they couldn't fly." "That doesn't sound like Sarah. She's always been so responsible." "Michelle says she's been acting strange lately, very hostile and jealous." I put my phone away and looked out the window as the plane pushed back from the gate. The ground crew guided us backward, and I watched Terminal C grow smaller in the distance. The flight attendant stopped by my seat with that practiced smile they all have. "Can I get you anything before takeoff, water, champagne?" "Champagne, please," I said. She poured from a fresh bottle, the bubbles rising elegantly in the plastic flute. As she handed it to me, she said warmly, "Special occasion." I took the glass and met her eyes. "Yes," I said, "my Independence Day." She smiled like she understood something deeper than my words, then moved on to the next passenger. I sipped the champagne and let myself feel it, the luxury of this moment, the rightness of this choice, the weight lifting from my shoulders with every foot of distance we gained from that terminal. From my purse, I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying since Mr. Henderson's letter arrived. My grandmother's handwritten note. I'd read it before, of course, but not slowly, not with the time and attention it deserved. Now, at 30,000 feet, climbing toward the clouds, I unfolded the delicate floral stationery and read every word carefully. Her handwriting wavered in places she'd been so sick when she wrote this, but her message was crystal clear. She'd seen everything. She'd known what they were doing to me, how they treated me, how little they valued me. And she'd made sure that when she was gone, I'd have the means to escape. Not just money, though that was part of it, but permission. The permission to choose myself, to walk away, to stop seeking love from people who'd never had any to give. You deserve so much more than they could ever offer, she'd written near the end. I'm so very proud of you. Tears blurred my vision, but these weren't tears of pain. They were tears of release, of gratitude, of finally being seen by someone who mattered. The plane leveled off and the seatbelt sign dinged off. I dried my eyes, took another sip of champagne, and pulled out my phone one last time. I switched it on for just 30 seconds, long enough to compose one text message. I opened the family group chat, the one I could see, but not participate in the one where they were all discussing my supposed betrayal right now. I typed 6 words: check your email, all of you. Then, I hit send, watched the message deliver, and switched my phone back to airplane mode. The scheduled emails would be arriving in their inboxes right now. The recording of their conspiracy, the bank statements, the evidence of theft, the letter from Mr. Henderson about the inheritance they'd tried to steal. Everything. I turned off my phone completely and settled back into my seat. Outside my window, California was falling away beneath us, and ahead lay an ocean and an island, and a future that was entirely beautifully mine. The flight to Maui took just under 6 hours, and I spent most of it in a state of peaceful semi-consciousness, the kind of rest that comes when you've finally stopped running from something. I watched 2 movies without really seeing them, ate a surprisingly good meal of macadamia-crusted fish, and stared out at the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean stretching below us. When the pilot announced our descent into Kahului Airport, I felt something shift in my chest. Not anxiety, but anticipation. I'd chosen Maui deliberately. My family's resort was on Oahu, a different island entirely. Even if they somehow managed to get new tickets and make it to Hawaii, we'd be separated by ocean and intention. They'd never find me, and I'd never have to see their faces again. The Maui air hit me the moment I stepped off the plane, warm and fragrant with flowers so different from the recycled airport air I'd been breathing. I collected my single carry-on bag, declined the lay greeting at the airport, and found the luxury resort shuttle waiting exactly where the confirmation email said it would be. The Grand Wailea Resort was the kind of place I'd never allowed myself to even dream about staying. I'd always been too practical, too focused on saving, too conditioned to believe that luxury was for other people. But my grandmother's inheritance had changed that calculation. The money in my new account, the account my parents knew nothing about, meant I could afford this. I could afford to heal in paradise. My ocean view suite was on the 6th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto a balcony overlooking the Pacific. The room was decorated in soft whites and blues with tropical flowers in a vase on the table, and a bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket with a welcome note. I stood on the balcony for a long moment, breathing in the salt air, listening to the waves, feeling the tension of the past months beginning to drain from my body. I'd booked a spa appointment for that evening and had reserved a spot on the private beach for the following morning. For now, I unpowered my laptop, ordered room service, fresh poke and mango, and took a long shower in the marble bathroom that was bigger than my bedroom back home. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, I sat on my balcony with a Mai Tai the bartender had sent up and watched the most beautiful sunset I'd ever seen. I took a photo with my phone, the drink in the foreground, the ocean and sky beyond, and posted it to my private Instagram account, the one only my real friends followed. The caption was simple: "Freedom tastes sweet." Then I checked the time. 2:15 p.m. Pacific time, 11:15 a.m. Hawaii time. Right about now, the scheduled emails would be hitting inboxes. I imagined them opening one by one like bombs detonating across the mainland. The email to my parents with the audio recording attached 3 minutes and 42 seconds of them laughing about abandoning me, planning to steal my inheritance, discussing how stupid and weak I was. The email to my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends with the bank statements attached every unauthorized withdrawal, highlighted every theft documented in black and white. The email to Michael's parents with the screenshot of Lisa's text, calling me so boring and jealous, and saying she was glad I'm not there, and CC'd on every email Attorney Henderson with the will document attached, showing that my grandmother had left me everything and that my parents had known and tried to steal it. I turned my phone back on not to read messages, but simply to watch. The notifications started immediately, a flood of texts and missed calls and voicemails that made my phone vibrate continuously. 20 messages, 50 messages, 100 messages. I didn't open a single one. I just watched the numbers climb, sipping my Mai Tai, feeling nothing but a calm sense of justice being served. At 143 messages, my Aunt Jennifer's name appeared on the screen as an incoming call. I didn't answer, but I could imagine the conversation she was having with my mother right now. "You told me Sarah abandoned Lisa." Jennifer's voice would be shaking with fury. "You said she sabotaged the wedding out of jealousy, but you stole from her. You were planning to leave her at the airport like garbage. How could you? How could you do this to your own daughter?" My mother would have no answer, not one that would make her look anything but monstrous. The messages kept coming. My grandmother's friends, the book club ladies, the women from her church, the neighbors who'd known our family for decades would have received emails too. I'd sent them the full story, wanting them to know what had happened to Margaret Chen's carefully planned legacy. Their messages would be going to my parents now. "Margaret would be ashamed of you. We thought we knew you, but this is unforgivable. Don't contact us again." Family friends whose parties my parents had attended for years, whose children had played with Lisa and me, whose homes had always been open to us, they'd be sending messages too. "We're uninviting you from our events. We don't associate with people who abuse their children. Please remove us from your contact list." The social death I'd orchestrated was swift and absolute. By the time the sun had fully set over Maui, my phone showed 217 notifications. I silenced it, set it face down on the table, and went to my spa appointment. The massage therapist worked knots out of my shoulders I didn't even know I was carrying. The facial left my skin glowing. The pedicure made me feel human again. When I emerged from the spa 2 hours later, wrapped in a plush robe and feeling lighter than I had in years, I changed into a sundress I'd bought specifically for this trip and went down to the resort's oceanfront restaurant. They seated me at a table right on the sand, the waves just feet away, tiki torches providing soft light. I ordered the fresh catch of the day and a glass of white wine. And I sat there alone, completely at peace, watching the stars come out over the Pacific. My phone, which I'd brought with me out of habit, lit up on the table. An incoming call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost declined it. I'd ignored every call since landing, but something made me answer. "Hello." "Sarah." The voice was male, uncertain, definitely not my father or any relative I knew. "This is Michael. Michael Anderson, Lisa's fiancé, former fiancé. I got your number from my mother." I sat up straighter, suddenly alert. "Michael, I need to talk to you about your sister." His voice was quiet, strained, like he'd been shouting and had worn himself out. I listened to the recording. I saw the bank statements. My mother told me everything that happened at the airport, everything she heard your parents say. "Sarah, I'm calling off the wedding." I looked out at the ocean, at the perfect tropical night, at the life I was building without any of them. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said, and meant it. He seemed like a decent person caught in someone else's web. "Don't be sorry," he said. "You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. My mother showed me everything you sent." Michael continued, his voice gaining strength now, like he'd made a decision and was committed to it. "The emails, the recording, the bank statements. Sarah, I sat in the Delta terminal and listened to that audio file 3 times. I heard your sister laugh. actually laugh about leaving you stranded at an airport. I heard your parents call you stupid and weak. I heard them plan to steal your inheritance from your grandmother. I stayed quiet, letting him process, letting him say what he needed to say. My parents have been married for 40 years, he said. They're not perfect, but they love each other, and they raised me to believe that family means something. That loyalty means something. That integrity isn't just a word you use in business meetings, it's how you live your life. And Lisa, God, I thought I knew her. I thought she was sweet, a little spoiled maybe, but fundamentally good. But the woman on that recording, the one laughing about hurting her own sister, that's not someone I can marry. That's not someone I even recognize. I'm sorry, I said again, because what else could I say? I'd destroyed his future, even if it was a future built on lies. Don't be, he repeated firmly. I need to go. I need to end this. But I wanted you to know. You deserved someone on your side. He hung up before I could respond. I set my phone down and looked at my untouched dinner, suddenly not hungry. I'd known this would have consequences, had planned for them, but hearing Michael's voice, the genuine hurt and disillusionment, made it all suddenly real in a way the abstract planning hadn't. I could picture what was happening right now back at LAX. Michael would be walking back to Terminal 2, his phone in his hand, his face set with determination. His mother would have told him everything she'd witnessed, everything she'd overheard, and then shown him the emails I'd sent. They'd probably gone somewhere quiet, maybe a coffee shop in the Delta terminal, and she'd played him the recording with her own phone. He would have listened to my family's voices discussing their betrayal with such casual cruelty. He would have heard Lisa, his fiancée, the woman he'd bought a ring for the woman he'd planned to spend his life with, giggle about how confused I'd be standing alone at the airport. And something in him would have broken or maybe clarified. The woman he thought he loved didn't actually exist. By now he'd be approaching his former future in-laws, his face carefully composed in that way people do when they're about to burn a bridge they'll never cross again. Lisa would see him coming, and her face would light up with relief, finally someone who could fix this disaster, someone with money and connections who could make new tickets appear and save her perfect day. Michael. She'd cry, mascara still streaked down her face, her white tracksuit rumpled from hours of crisis. Thank God we need to. But he'd cut her off, his voice cold and clear enough that people around them would stop and listen. Did you know they were going to abandon your sister? Lisa would freeze her mouth, still open, her eyes going wide. She'd look at her parents, then back at Michael, calculating. What? No, I mean, Sarah's always been so dramatic, it was just a joke. We were going to tell her eventually. A joke. Michael's voice would rise despite himself. They stole her car. They drained her bank accounts. They planned to steal her inheritance from her dying grandmother. And you laughed about it. I heard you laugh, Lisa. She's fine. Lisa's voice would go shrill, defensive. She has a job. She doesn't need all that money. My parents needed help, and Sarah's always had more than she needs anyway. I can't marry someone who treats family this way. The words would come out flat, final. He'd reach into his pocket and pull out the engagement ring he'd made Lisa take it off during the security chaos hours ago, and she'd given it to him for safekeeping. Now he'd hold it out to her, 3 carats of princess-cut diamond catching the fluorescent airport lights. This is over, Lisa. What? Her voice would crack. No, you can't. Michael, please, I love you. You don't know what love is, he'd say quietly. Love doesn't abandon people. Love doesn't steal from the people who sacrifice for you. Love doesn't laugh at someone else's pain. Lisa would grab for his arm and he'd step back. That's when she'd start screaming, her voice echoing through Terminal 2, every carefully constructed piece of her public persona shattering. You're breaking up with me at the airport on my wedding day! Michael would look at her steadily, and I imagined there might even be a hint of satisfaction in his voice when he responded, You plan to leave your sister at an airport. Seems fitting. Mrs. Anderson would appear beside her son, then placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. She'd look at my parents, my father still pale and defeated. my mother's face twisted with fury and shame, and deliver her own verdict. You should be ashamed of yourselves, truly ashamed. If I had a daughter like Sarah, someone so loyal and hardworking and kind, despite how you treated her, I would treasure her. But you threw her away like trash, and now you're paying the price. Then Michael and his parents would walk away, rolling their luggage behind them, leaving my family standing in the middle of the terminal like a tableau of destruction. Other travelers who'd been watching this drama unfold for the past several hours would have their phones out now. In 2024, nothing stays private. Videos would be recording photos being snapped, the whole meltdown captured from multiple angles. By tonight, this would be on Facebook. Local community groups then spreading wider. Bridezilla meltdown at LAX. Family wedding disaster caught on camera. The comments would be ruthless, the shares relentless. As Michael disappeared into the crowd, Lisa would turn on her parents with a fury that had been building all day. Her face, streaked with mascara and twisted with rage, would look almost unrecognizable. "This is your fault!" She'd scream loud enough that security would start moving toward them again. "You promised this would work. You said Sarah was too weak to fight back. You said we could use her money and she'd never do anything about it." My mother would try to grab Lisa's arm to quiet her, but Lisa would shake her off violently. "Fix this. Get Sarah on the phone now. I don't care how you do it, but you fix this right now, or I swear to God, I'll tell everyone whose idea this really was. I'll tell them all that you came to me with this plan." And there it was, the final fracture. The family turning on itself, each member desperate to save themselves, willing to throw the others under the bus. My father would look at my mother would look at Lisa, and all three of them would realize simultaneously that there was no fixing this, no way back, no redemption arc that would restore what they'd destroyed. They'd finally understand what I'd known for weeks. They'd lost everything. And they'd lost it because they'd never valued what they had. I finished my dinner alone on that beach in Maui, the waves providing a gentle soundtrack to my thoughts. Michael's call had been unexpected, but not unwelcome. It meant the truth was spreading faster than I'd anticipated, reaching the people who needed to hear it most. While I sat in paradise thousands of miles away, my family's carefully constructed lies were collapsing in real time. In Hawaii, but on a different island, 50 wedding guests were experiencing their own version of chaos. I could picture it clearly because I'd been to enough weddings to know how they worked, how the timeline flowed, how expectations built toward that ceremonial moment. The Island Dreams wedding resort on Oahu would have been picture-perfect that afternoon. White chairs arranged in neat rows on the beach, an arch decorated with tropical flowers, a sound system playing soft music tables set with elegant linens and centerpieces that cost more per arrangement than most people spent on groceries in a month. The wedding coordinator, a professional woman named Alana, who'd probably done hundreds of these ceremonies, would have been checking her watch with increasing concern. The ceremony was supposed to start at 4 p.m. By 3:30, she'd be approaching the assembled guests with her practiced smile starting to crack. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received word that the bride has been delayed. We're postponing the ceremony start time. Please enjoy the refreshments, and we'll update you shortly." 50 people who'd paid for flights, hotels, and vacation days would be sitting there in their wedding attire wondering what delayed meant. The whispers would start immediately. Lisa's college roommate to her husband, "This is so weird. Lisa's been posting about this wedding for months. How do you get delayed on your own wedding day?" One of Michael's work colleagues to another, "I heard something went wrong at the airport. Technical issue with their flight, maybe." But there's always someone would pull out their phone and start scrolling through Facebook. Maybe it was one of the bridesmaids who'd flown out early, checking the local Los Angeles groups she belonged to. Her face would go pale as she found a video posted an hour ago already at 15,000 views and climbing. "Bridezilla meltdown at LAX, warning language." "Oh my God," she'd say loud enough that the people around her would look up. "You have to see this." The video would pass from phone to phone, guest to guest, the truth spreading like wildfire through the wedding venue. There was Lisa in her white tracksuit screaming at Michael in the middle of Terminal 2. There were my parents looking haggard and desperate. There was Michael calm and resolute handing back the engagement ring. And there was Lisa's voice captured in crystal clear audio by someone's iPhone. "You promised Sarah was too weak to fight back. You said we could use her money." The comments section would be brutal and growing by the minute. Wait, she was going to abandon her sister at the airport? Karma is real. The sister funded this whole wedding and they didn't even invite her. These people are sociopaths. That poor older sister. I hope she's somewhere amazing right now. Some of Lisa's friends would initially try to defend her in the comments, typing furiously. "You don't know the whole story. Sarah has always been jealous of Lisa." But then they'd start receiving the emails I'd sent or seeing screenshots that were being shared, the audio recording of the conspiracy, the bank statements showing the theft, the will document proving my parents had tried to steal my inheritance. One by one, Lisa's defenders would go quiet or, worse, switch sides. "I take it back. I just heard the recording. This is indefensible." The bridesmaids group chat, which one of them would later screenshot and leak because nothing stays private when you've created this much drama, would be a fascinating study in social dynamics. Should we still post the hashtag Lisa's Special Day photos, or "I'm deleting everything from my Instagram. I don't want to be associated with this. Did she really steal from her own sister? I feel sick." At the resort, Alana, the coordinator, would be having a very different conversation with my parents, who'd somehow made it onto a later flight using God knows what method, probably begging and leveraging credit they didn't have. She'd be holding a tablet showing the contract they'd signed, her professional courtesy strained to breaking. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, the wedding has been canceled, but you're still responsible for payment. The total is $18,000 that covers the venue, catering, flowers, staff, everything that was prepared per your specifications." My father would pull out his credit card, the one he'd been so confident in that morning. Declined. Another card. Declined. A third card. Declined. Every single one blocked or maxed out, the result of weeks of fraudulent charges finally catching up with him, banks freezing accounts pending investigation. "I don't have it right now," he'd say, his voice hoarse. "Can we set up a payment plan?" "Sir, we require immediate payment. If you can't provide that, we'll have to pursue legal action." Legal action. The words that every middle-class family fears because they mean lawyers and court dates and public records that anyone can search. My parents, who'd built their entire identity on appearing respectable, would now have a resort threatening to sue them for breach of contract. My mother would be on her phone calling relatives with shaking hands. First her sister Jennifer. "I need to borrow money, just $18,000. I'll pay you back, I swear." Jennifer's response would be ice cold. "After what you did to Sarah, after you stole from your own daughter, never contact me again." Click. She'd try cousins, old friends, anyone she could think of who might have that kind of cash available. But they'd all received the emails by now, had all seen the video, had all made their judgments. The answer would be the same every time: no. Meanwhile, back at whatever hotel room they'd managed to book, Lisa would be spiraling in a different direction. Her Instagram, which had been flooded with hateful comments and lost hundreds of followers in the past few hours, would suddenly update with a new post. A photo that made me actually gasp when I saw it later that evening, a sonogram image, grainy and generic looking, the kind you could probably find with a simple Google search. The caption read, "To my haters, I'm pregnant. Michael's baby. He can't leave me now. I'm carrying his child. Hashgashed. Baby on board. Family first. Hashtag love wins." I stared at my phone screen in disbelief. She was lying. She had to be lying. This was a desperate woman making a desperate play, trying to use the ultimate manipulation to get Michael back, to shift the narrative, to make herself the victim again. But as I read the caption again, I realized she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because if she was lying about being pregnant, that was something that could be proven. And when it was proven false, she wouldn't just lose Michael, she'd lose whatever shred of credibility she had left. I stared at that sonogram image for a long moment, my initial shock giving way to something colder and more analytical. The photo was too perfect, too generic. The date stamp in the corner was blurry, conveniently unreadable. And the timing Lisa had supposedly taken this test yesterday, which would have been the day before her wedding in the midst of all the planning chaos. It didn't add up. But what struck me most was the desperation of it. This wasn't just a lie. This was a nuclear option, the kind of move you make when you've lost everything else and are willing to burn whatever bridges remain, just to survive the moment. Within minutes of Lisa's post going live, the Instagram algorithm did exactly what she'd hoped it would do. The comments section, which had been filled with anger and condemnation just hours before, suddenly shifted tone. "Oh my God, you're pregnant. Congratulations. This changes everything. Michael, you need to step up and take responsibility for your child. A baby deserves both parents no matter what happened between you two." Lisa had added a second photo to the carousel, a positive pregnancy test, 2 pink lines clearly visible against the white background. It looked real enough to the casual observer, though I noticed she'd carefully positioned her thumb to cover any brand name or manufacturing details that might make it traceable. The caption for the second photo was even more manipulative. "Our baby deserves both parents, at Michael Anderson. I know things are complicated right now, but we created a life together. That's bigger than any argument, bigger than any misunderstanding. Baby Anderson." Family first. Unconditional love. My parents, who must have been watching Lisa's social media like hawks, immediately seized on this lifeline. My mother's Facebook status updated within minutes. Despite the challenges and misunderstandings of today, we're overjoyed to announce that our daughter Lisa is expecting. We're going to be grandparents. Family is everything, and a baby is a blessing that brings people together, praying for healing and reconciliation. The subtext was clear. See, you can't ruin a family now. There's an innocent child involved. This changes everything I could imagine. Michael's phone exploding with notifications as he was tagged in Lisa's post. He'd probably been in his hotel room trying to process the day's events, maybe having a drink with his parents and talking through what had just happened. Then his phone would light up with Instagram alerts, text messages from friends, and within moments, a call from Lisa herself. "What are you talking about?" His voice would be carefully controlled, the voice of a man who'd already been lied to once today and wasn't sure what to believe anymore. "Michael, I'm pregnant." Lisa's voice would be breathy, emotional, riding that line between joy and tears. "I took the test yesterday morning before all this chaos happened. I was going to tell you on our wedding night as a surprise, but everything fell apart. We're having a baby. We haven't." Michael would pause, and I could hear the confusion and doubt in that silence. "Lisa, we agreed to wait until after marriage. We both wanted that. That night after the engagement party, remember?" Lisa would say quickly, her lie already prepared. 3 months ago, we went back to your place, we had champagne we were celebrating, and things just happened. You said you loved me, that you couldn't wait to start our life together." Michael would be searching his memory, trying to reconcile what she was saying with what he actually remembered. We were drunk, but I thought we didn't. I don't remember us actually." "You were pretty drunk," Lisa would say, her tone shifting to something almost accusatory. "But it happened, Michael. And now there's a baby. Our baby. You can't just walk away from that." The seed of doubt would be planted. Michael was a good man, a responsible man, the kind raised by conservative parents who believed in doing the right thing. Even if he couldn't clearly remember that night, even if something felt off about Lisa's story, could he really take the chance that he was wrong, that he might be abandoning his own child? His parents would be the next pressure point. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, with their 40 years of marriage and their traditional values, would pull him aside. "Son, if there's even a chance this baby is yours, you need to at least verify it. You can't just walk away without knowing for certain." His friends would be texting, "Dude, I saw the post. This is complicated now. You need to at least get a paternity test." Whatever she did, If that's your kid, you have responsibilities. And then my parents would make their move, calling the Andersons directly. My mother's voice would be trembling with self-righteous indignation. Your son needs to take responsibility for this. Lisa is carrying his child and he's abandoning her because of some misunderstanding with her sister. What kind of man does that? The social media pile-on would be swift and brutal in a different direction now. Someone would create a hashtag Michael Anderson. Local Facebook groups would pick it up. Finance bro abandons pregnant fiancé at airport. The story would become something new. The video of Lisa's meltdown would be recontextualized. Woman having understandable emotional breakdown after fiancé dumps her while carrying his child. The narrative was changing in real time, and Lisa knew exactly what she was doing. She'd weaponized the one thing that could create enough doubt, enough social pressure, enough guilt to maybe, just maybe, pull Michael back from the edge of walking away forever. I sat on my hotel balcony, the warm Hawaiian breeze carrying the scent of plumeria, and watched this manipulation unfold through my phone screen. I watched the comments pile up, watched my parents' posts get shared, watched the public opinion start to shift in Lisa's favor. And I smiled. Because Lisa had just made a critical error. She'd told a lie that could be definitively proven false, and I knew exactly how to prove it. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Dr. Ricardo Martinez had been our family physician for 20 years, had treated Lisa and me since we were teenagers. He was a kind man, ethical, but also someone who believed in truth and protecting his patients from harm. I hit dial and waited through 3 rings before his familiar voice answered. Dr. Martinez's office, this is Dr. Martinez speaking. Dr. Martinez, this is Sarah Chen. I need to ask you about my sister Lisa's recent medical appointments. Sarah, hello? Dr. Martinez said, his tone warm but professional. It's been a while. How are you? I'm well, thank you. I'm actually calling about Lisa. I know this is unusual, but I need to ask you something important, and I need you to understand why I'm asking. There was a pause. You know I can't discuss a patient's medical information without their consent, even with family members. I understand. But Lisa just posted publicly on social media that she's pregnant. She's claiming the father is her now ex-fiancé, and she's using this claim to manipulate him and salvage a situation that, well, it's complicated. Dr. Martinez, I have reason to believe she's lying, and I need to know if you can confirm whether or not she's actually pregnant. Another pause, longer this time. Sarah, why do you think she's lying? Because I know my sister. And because the timing doesn't make sense. She posted a sonogram that looks generic, a test that could be anyone's or even fake. And she's desperate right now, she just lost everything, and this is her Hail Mary attempt to get it back. Dr. Martinez sighed, and I could hear him thinking through the ethical implications. If a patient is making false medical claims publicly, especially claims that could harm another person, that does concern me. Let me see what I can tell you without violating HIPAA. I heard typing, probably him pulling up records. Lisa had her annual checkup with me 1 week ago. Part of routine screening includes pregnancy testing. The result was negative. She is not pregnant, Sarah. Additionally, she requested a renewal of her birth control prescription at that appointment, which I provided. Relief and vindication washed over me in equal measure. Would you be willing to provide a statement to that effect if needed? Not publicly, but to the person she's lying to. If Lisa is using a false pregnancy claim to manipulate someone, yes, I would be willing to provide a statement. That crosses a line from patient confidentiality into potential fraud. Have this person contact my office directly, and I'll confirm what I can within legal boundaries. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I texted Michael's mother, who'd given me her number earlier. Mrs. Anderson, please have Michael call Dr. Ricardo Martinez at this number. He's our family physician and has information Michael needs to hear about Lisa's pregnancy claim. While I waited, I imagined what was happening on Michael's end. His father, the prominent attorney, would have made some calls. When your son's fiancée publicly claims she's carrying his child and his entire social circle is watching you, don't just take her word for it. You investigate. Mr. Anderson would have hired a private investigator within hours. Someone discreet, efficient, someone who knew how to pull records quickly. The investigator would start with the simplest verifiable facts. Michael's apartment building had security cameras in the lobby and at all entrances. Getting footage from 3 months ago would require a formal request, but with a lawyer making that request, and the building management wanting to avoid any liability, they'd cooperate. The footage from the night of the engagement party would be clear and damning. Michael entering his building at 11:07 p.m. alone, slightly unsteady, but walking under his own power. No Lisa. No one else. Just Michael going home by himself after a party where he'd had too much to drink. Michael's Uber records would confirm it a ride from the restaurant where they'd celebrated to his apartment, one passenger drop-off at 11 p.m. No second ride, no return trip, nothing that would suggest Lisa had come with him. And then there was Lisa's phone. She'd given Michael her password months ago, one of those relationship gestures that signals trust and transparency. Michael would hate using it against her, would feel like he was violating her privacy, but his father would remind him she'd made a public claim that affected his entire future. Verification wasn't a violation, it was self-defense. Lisa's location data from that night would show her phone stationary at her parents' house in Riverside from 9 p.m. until 7 the next morning. She'd never been at Michael's apartment. She'd never been anywhere near him. It would have taken Michael most of the day to gather all this evidence to have his father's investigator compile it into something airtight. But by evening, he'd have everything he needed. And Michael, who valued integrity above almost everything else, would do what needed to be done. His Instagram post went live at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. I saw it immediately because I'd been checking his profile periodically, waiting to see how he'd respond to Lisa's manipulation. The post was a simple text image with a black background and white letters, professional and devastating. I'm addressing the pregnancy rumors circulating today. Lisa Chen and I have not been intimate during our relationship. We both agreed to wait until marriage, and we honored that commitment. I have building security footage, phone location records, and medical testimony from her own physician proving this pregnancy claim is false. I will not be manipulated through lies. Our engagement is permanently and irrevocably ended. Attached to the post were 2 images. The first was a statement on law firm letterhead from Anderson and Associates, signed by Michael's father, outlining the evidence they'd compiled. The second was a still frame from security camera footage, time-stamped and dated, showing Michael entering his building alone. Lisa's face wasn't in the photo, but the point was clear: she'd never been there. The post had comments disabled, but within minutes it had thousands of likes and shares. People were screenshotting it, posting it to other platforms, spreading it across the same networks that had briefly turned sympathetic to Lisa's pregnancy announcement. I refreshed Lisa's Instagram page and watched in real time as her world imploded for the second time in one day. The comments on her pregnancy post, which had been supportive just hours ago, were now vicious. Fake pregnancy, are you serious? This is pathological lying. You need professional help. I can't believe I defended you. I feel disgusted with myself. Faking a pregnancy is one of the lowest things a person can do. The comments kept coming, hundreds per minute, and then I saw the one that would hurt Lisa most. It was from Stephanie, her former best friend, the bridesmaid who'd been with her through college and every major life event since. If you lied about this, what else did you lie about? I don't even know who you are anymore, Lisa. Don't contact me again. That comment got more likes than any other, was screenshot and shared more than any other, because it represented something beyond just strangers on the internet passing judgment. It was someone who knew Lisa, who'd loved Lisa, publicly cutting ties because the lies had finally gone too far. I set my phone down and looked out at the dark ocean, the moon reflecting off the waves. Lisa had tried to use the oldest manipulation in the book claiming pregnancy to trap a man, and it had backfired spectacularly. Not only had she failed to get Michael back, she'd destroyed whatever credibility she had left and lost her closest friends in the process. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring even more consequences. But tonight, I just sat in paradise and let the justice wash over me like those gentle Hawaiian waves. I woke the next morning to the sound of waves and sunlight streaming through my hotel windows. For a moment, I forgot where I was, forgot everything that had happened, and just existed in that peaceful liminal space between sleep and waking. Then memory returned, and with it a sense of satisfaction that was almost physical. I checked my phone over breakfast, fresh papaya and macadamia pancakes on my balcony, and found an email from Mr. Henderson time-stamped at 6 a.m. Pacific Time. The subject line read, "Legal action commenced." "Dear Ms. Chen," it began. "As discussed and authorized, I have filed a civil lawsuit on your behalf against Richard and Susan Chen. The complaint includes charges of theft vehicle valued at $12,000 plus $8,000 in unauthorized account withdrawals fraud, attempted theft of inheritance through concealment of legal will and conversion of assets. We are demanding full restitution of all stolen funds and property reimbursement of legal fees and punitive damages. The total amount sought is $50,000. A certified letter has been sent to their residence requiring a response within 30 days. Please call my office at your convenience to discuss next steps." I set down my coffee and imagined that certified letter arriving at my parents' house in Riverside. The mail carrier would require a signature. One of them, probably my mother, since my father would likely be at work trying to salvage his reputation, would sign for it, see the law firm return address, and feel her stomach drop. She'd open it in their kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd eaten countless meals, while they discussed Lisa's needs and ignored mine, and she'd read words like defendant and fraud and punitive damages, and realized that this wasn't going away. This wasn't something they could smooth over with excuses or manipulate their way out of. This was real legal consequences with real financial penalties they couldn't afford. And that's when the real family implosion would begin. My mother would call my father at work, her voice shrill with panic. He'd come home early and they'd sit at that kitchen table with the lawsuit papers spread between them like evidence at a crime scene. The recriminations would start immediately. "This is because you insisted on selling her car," my mother would hiss, jabbing her finger at the document. "I said it was too risky that she'd notice, but you said we needed the money immediately." "I needed the money." My father's voice would rise, all his careful control evaporating under stress. "You said she'd never have the spine to fight back. You said she was too weak, too desperate for our approval to ever stand up to us. This is on you." Lisa, who'd been hiding in her childhood bedroom since they'd returned from Hawaii in disgrace, would hear the shouting and come downstairs. Her Instagram was now private. Her phone number changed her entire social media presence, effectively deleted after the fake pregnancy disaster. She'd be wearing pajamas at 2 p.m, her hair unwashed, her eyes red from crying. "You promised me a perfect wedding," she'd scream at both of them. "You said everything was handled. You said Sarah was stupid and weak and would never fight back. Now I'm a joke online. My name is a punchline. I can't even go to the grocery store without people recognizing me from that video." My mother would turn on her, then months of enabling suddenly transforming into resentment. "Maybe if you weren't such a spoiled brat demanding Hawaii a destination wedding we couldn't afford, none of this would have happened. You wanted everything, and you wanted it handed to you on a silver platter. I'm moving out," Lisa would announce, grabbing her phone like it was a weapon. "I can't be associated with you failures anymore. You've ruined my life, and I'm done." But where would she go? Michael's family had made it clear they wanted nothing to do with her. Her friends had all abandoned her after the fake pregnancy revelation. She had no job that paid enough for rent, no savings, no one left who'd take her in. The threat would hang in the air, empty and impotent, and everyone would know it. The social consequences were mounting by the hour. My parents' church. The place where my mother had volunteered for 15 years, where she'd found her identity and her social circle, had called that morning. The pastor's voice had been kind but firm. "Susan Richard, given the circumstances and the attention your family is receiving, we think it would be best if you took some time away from your volunteer positions. The congregation is concerned. My father's workplace was conducting an HR investigation. Several co-workers had seen the videos, read the news coverage, and questioned whether someone who'd steal from their own daughter could be trusted with company finances. His boss had called him into a closed-door meeting about reputation management and ethics concerns. My mother's book club, her Tuesday morning sanctuary for the past decade, had uninvited her via group text. "We don't feel comfortable having you in the group right now, Susan. What you did to Sarah is unforgivable." On the family Facebook page, my Aunt Jennifer had posted publicly, "I'm ashamed to be related to Susan and Richard Chen. What they did to their daughter Sarah is abuse, plain and simple. I will not be attending any family functions where they are present, and I encourage others to examine their own consciences about supporting this behavior." The post had 63 likes and 42 comments, all agreeing with her. Even their neighbors, people they'd lived next to for 20 years, were avoiding them. No more friendly waves across the lawn. No more borrowed cups of sugar or invitations to backyard barbecues. Just drawn curtains and hurried retreats into houses when my parents' car pulled into the driveway. That night, the stress that had been building in my father's body for weeks finally manifested in physical form. He'd been sitting at the kitchen table going through their finances, trying to figure out how they'd pay for the lawsuit, when he felt a sharp, crushing pain in his chest that radiated down his left arm. His face went white. He clutched at his shirt, his breath coming in short gasps. "Richard!" My mother's voice went from angry to terrified in an instant. "Richard, what's wrong?" He couldn't speak, could only shake his head, his eyes wide with fear. "Lisa!" my mother screamed. "Call 911 now!" Lisa would fumble with her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed. The ambulance would arrive within 8 minutes, paramedics rushing in with equipment and questions. They'd load my father onto a stretcher, start an IV, attach monitors. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, my father would grab the nearest paramedic's arm. His voice would be barely a whisper, choked with pain, and something that might have been regret. "I need Sarah. Please." My mother would hear it, and her face would crumble because she'd know what it meant. Even now, even after everything, he wanted me. Not Lisa. Me. And I was 4,000 miles away, unreachable, free. I spent my third day in Hawaii at the spa getting a hot stone massage and a seaweed wrap, deliberately keeping my phone in my hotel room safe. I needed distance, needed to let the consequences play out without my constant monitoring. When I returned to my room in the late afternoon, refreshed and centered, I finally checked my messages. 47 notifications. I scrolled through them with clinical detachment, watching the desperation escalate in real time. There was one voicemail from my mother, left at 3 a.m. Hawaii time, 6 a.m. California time, probably right after they'd gotten to the hospital. I almost deleted it without listening, but something made me press play. I needed to hear it, needed to know exactly what they'd say when their world was truly falling apart. "Sarah." My mother's voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. "Your father is in the hospital. He had a heart attack. They're saying he needs surgery. He's asking for you. We're sorry, Sarah. Please. He needs you. We need you. Please come home." The message ended. No elaboration, no explanation, just that bare plea. I saved it and moved on. Lisa had sent 3 text messages over the course of the day, each one more frantic than the last. The final one read, "Sarah, I know I messed up. I know I was terrible to you. But Dad could die. Please come home. I'm begging you. Please." Then there were 5 missed calls from my Aunt Jennifer, the same aunt who'd publicly denounced my parents on Facebook just days ago. She'd left one voicemail. "Sarah, it's Aunt Jennifer. Your mother called me. I know things are complicated, but they're desperate. Your father is in intensive care. Can't you show mercy? Can't you be the bigger person here?" I called her back. She answered on the first ring. "Sarah, thank God. Are you coming home?" "No," I said simply. "But I will pay for Dad's hospital bills. All of them. Surgery, recovery, whatever he needs. I'll call the hospital directly and set up payment." That's generous, but Sarah, your father wants to see you. Don't you think? I'll pay the bills, that's all. I won't visit. There was a long pause. That's so cold, Sarah. Is it? I kept my voice even factual. Is it colder than planning to abandon me at an airport? Colder than stealing my car, draining my bank accounts, trying to steal my inheritance from my dying grandmother? Tell me, Aunt Jennifer, where does compassion fit into any of that? She went quiet. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. I'm not cruel, I continued. I'm not letting him die without medical care. I'm paying for treatment that could save his life. But I'm also done being their doormat. I'm done sacrificing myself on the altar of, but their family. They chose to hurt me. Repeatedly, deliberately. Now they're facing consequences. That's not cruelty. That's justice. Sarah. Aunt Jennifer's voice was softer now, uncertain. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just give them my message. I'll handle the hospital bills. That's the extent of my involvement. I hung up before she could respond. Then I called Riverside Community Hospital, navigated through the phone tree to billing, and arranged for my father's entire hospital stay to be billed to my account. The representative seemed surprised by my request. Apparently, most people don't call to pay for relatives they're not visiting, but she processed it efficiently. My phone rang 2 hours later. Unknown number, California area code. I should have ignored it, but I answered anyway, curious to see who'd managed to track down my new number. Sarah, my mother's voice but different now, harder, more calculating. She'd had time to regroup to strategize. We need to talk. How did you get this number? That doesn't matter. What matters is that we're losing the house. The lawsuit you filed, we can't pay it. Do you understand what you're doing? You're making us homeless, your own parents out on the street. You should have thought about that before you stole from me. How can you be so selfish? Her voice rose to that familiar pitch, the one she used when she wanted to make me feel small. After we raised you, after we gave you a home food education, this is how you repay us. You raised me to be your ATM, I said calmly. You raised me to believe my only value was financial. You taught me that love was conditional on my usefulness to you. Well, congratulations. I learned the lesson, and now the machine is closed. You ungrateful. I paid Dad's hospital bills. Every cent. Surgery, recovery, medications, follow-up care, all covered, so don't tell me I'm heartless. That seemed to throw her. You... What? I called the hospital. He'll get the care he needs, but that's all you're getting from me. No visits, no reconciliation, no more money. Just his medical care because despite everything, I'm not the monster you tried to make me. My mother's voice changed then, dropping the pleading and revealing the venom underneath. You'll regret this, Sarah. You think you're so strong now, so independent. But one day you'll need us. One day you'll be sick or alone or desperate and we won't be there. You'll die alone in some nursing home with no one who cares about you, and it'll be your fault. You're destroying this family. I felt nothing. No pain, no guilt, no second guessing. Just a clear, clean certainty. I'd rather be alone than abused, I said quietly. I'd rather have no family than a family that only values me as a source of income. You didn't destroy this family, Mom. You just revealed what it always was, and I'm choosing to walk away from it. Goodbye. I hung up before she could respond. Then I blocked the number, added it to my permanent block list, and turned off my phone completely. Outside my window, the sun was setting over the Pacific again, painting the sky in those impossible tropical colors. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle I'd bought at the resort gift shop and sat on my balcony breathing in the flower-scented air. My father was going to survive. He'd get his surgery, recover, go home to face the mess he'd helped create. My mother would keep trying to reach me through intermediaries. Lisa would continue to spiral. And I would be here 4,000 miles away, finally learning what it felt like to choose myself first. For the first time in my entire life, I felt no obligation to fix them, save them, or sacrifice myself for their comfort. I felt free. I didn't know what my father was experiencing in that hospital bed, but I could imagine it. I'd spent enough years studying his patterns, understanding his psychology to construct a fairly accurate picture of what he must be going through. The cardiologist would have been direct the way doctors are when they need patients to take things seriously. "Mr. Chen, you've had a stress-induced heart attack. Your blood pressure has been dangerously high for years. I can see from your medical history that multiple physicians have warned you about this. You've ignored those warnings, and now your body has reached a breaking point. If you don't eliminate the sources of extreme stress in your life, the next heart attack will likely be fatal." My father would have nodded lying there in his hospital gown, with monitors beeping around him, IV lines in his arm, feeling his mortality for perhaps the first time in his 59 years. And he'd realize with the clarity that only a brush with death can provide that every source of stress in his life right now was self-inflicted. The lawsuit I'd filed, the social shame, the financial ruin, the loss of his reputation, his standing in the community, his sense of himself as a man who had it all together. He'd done this to himself. We'd done this to ourselves. On his second day in the hospital, when he was stable enough to be moved from intensive care to a regular room, he'd be alone for the first time with nothing but his thoughts and the television mounted on the wall across from his bed. He'd flip through channels aimlessly, trying to distract himself until he landed on the local news. The segment would be one of those human interest stories that local stations love. Wedding scam video goes viral, family drama caught on camera at LAX. There would be his family on the screen. Lisa screaming, my mother looking haggard, him pale and defeated in the background of someone's cell phone video. The anchor's voiceover would be professional but tinged with judgment. The video has been viewed over 200,000 times, with many commenters expressing sympathy for the older sister who reportedly funded the wedding she wasn't invited to. He'd see himself as the world saw him, not a victim of an ungrateful daughter, but a thief, a man who'd stolen from his own child. The nurse who came in to check his vitals would recognize him. Of course she would, the video had been everywhere. She'd be professional, efficient, but cold. No small talk about the weather or how he was feeling emotionally. Just the medical necessities, then a quick exit. He'd see it in her eyes, disgust barely concealed. When his co-workers from the logistics company came to visit Tom and Rashid, guys he'd worked with for 15 years, they'd bring flowers and awkward smiles. They'd stay for maybe 10 minutes, making stilted conversation about work and how the department was managing without him carefully avoiding any mention of why he was really here. They wouldn't meet his eyes. They'd check their phones too often, and they'd leave with visible relief, promising to visit again, but he'd know they wouldn't. Alone again, staring at the ceiling tiles, my father would have nothing to do but think, and for maybe the first time in decades, he'd think honestly. How did I become this person? The question would cycle through his mind like a mantra. He'd been raised by immigrant parents who'd worked brutal hours to give him opportunities. He'd gone to college, built a career, bought a house, started a family. Somewhere along the way, he was supposed to have become successful, respectable, someone his parents could be proud of. When had he turned into someone who'd steal from his own daughter? He'd remember me as a child, 7 years old, bringing home a spelling test with a perfect score, my face lit up with pride, seeking his approval. "That's good, Sarah," he'd said, barely looking up from his newspaper. "Keep it up." Not a hug, not real praise, just an acknowledgement that I'd met expectations. I'd always been trying to please him, always working harder, always achieving more, hoping that one day he'd look at me the way he looked at Lisa, with uncomplicated love. I'd been an A student through all of school. I'd never asked for expensive things. I'd never thrown tantrums or demanded attention. I'd been easy, and he'd taken that ease for granted. Worse, he'd exploited it. Then he'd think about Lisa, how she'd scream until she got what she wanted, how she'd never been satisfied with anything, always needing more, better, newer. How she'd failed at everything she'd tried, but they'd always bailed her out, made excuses, blamed everyone else for her failures. They'd created a monster, and they'd called it love. The thought would hit him like a physical blow. We destroyed the good one and enabled the bad one. Sarah had been everything a parent could ask for, and they'd treated her like an ATM. Lisa had been demanding and entitled, and they'd treated her like a princess. They'd gotten it exactly backwards, and now both daughters were lost to them. One by choice, one by consequence. His phone would be on the bedside table fully charged because Susan had brought his charger during one of her tearful visits. He'd pick it up, stare at the screen, then open his messages. His fingers would hover over my contact information, the number I'd changed, but that wouldn't matter because I'd blocked them all anyway. But he'd type it anyway. He'd need to say it even if I never read it, even if it disappeared into the digital void. I'm sorry. I failed you as a father. I don't deserve forgiveness, but you deserve to know this wasn't your fault. It was always mine. He'd read it 3 times. Consider deleting it. Wonder if it was enough, if words could ever be enough to repair what he'd broken. Know that they couldn't, but also know that he had to try anyway. His thumb would hover over the send button for a long moment. Then, with something that felt like both courage and surrender, he'd press it. The message would send. It would sit there in his message thread, delivered but unread because I'd blocked him. He wouldn't know that would watch his phone for hours, hoping for those 3 dots that meant I was typing a response. They'd never come. But somewhere in Hawaii, on a server in a cloud, his message would exist. His admission. His apology. Too late, incomplete, inadequate, but finally, at least, honest. On my 5th morning in Hawaii, I woke early and walked down to the beach with my grandmother's letter. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft pastels, and the sand was cool beneath my bare feet. I found a quiet spot away from the early morning joggers and sat down, pulling the familiar floral stationery from its protective sleeve. I'd read this letter a dozen times already, but today I needed to read it again. Needed to absorb every word, let it sink into my bones. My dearest Sarah, it began in my grandmother's elegant script. If you're reading this, I've gone to be with your grandfather, and I'm at peace. I traced the words with my finger, imagining her hand forming each letter while she sat in that hospital bed knowing her time was limited. Sarah, my brave girl, I watched your parents take and take from you. I watched you shrink yourself to fit their expectations, make yourself smaller, so Lisa could be bigger, sacrifice your dreams so they could fund hers. You deserve more, so much more than they ever gave you. This inheritance isn't just money, it's permission to live for yourself. Don't waste it trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. Don't spend another moment earning love that should have been freely given. Be free, darling. Be gloriously, unapologetically free. The tears came suddenly, unexpectedly, and once they started, I couldn't stop them. I sat on that beach and cried for the first time since this entire ordeal began. But these weren't tears of pain or grief. They were tears of relief, of release, of finally understanding that I was never the problem. For 35 years, I'd believed that if I just worked harder, sacrificed more, proved myself enough, they would finally see me. Finally love me the way I needed to be loved. But the truth was simpler and more devastating. They were never going to change. Not because I wasn't worthy, but because they didn't want to. They'd built an entire family system around using me, and worshiping Lisa and acknowledging what they'd done would require them to face truths about themselves they weren't capable of facing. I let go of that hope sitting there on the beach. Let it dissolve like sugar in water, sweet and painful and necessary. Some family isn't worth keeping. Some relationships are so toxic that the healthiest thing you can do is walk away, even when everyone tells you that family should be forever. Beautiful morning, isn't it? A voice pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up to see 2 older women, both probably in their 70s, settling into beach chairs a few feet away. One wore a wide-brimmed sun hat, the other had silver hair cut short and practical. "It is," I said, wiping my eyes quickly. "Don't apologize for crying," the woman in the hat said gently. "This beach has seen plenty of tears. I'm Dorothy, And this is my friend Eleanor. We've been coming here every year for the past decade." "Sarah," I said. "First time in Hawaii?" "Running away or running toward?" Eleanor asked with a knowing smile. The question surprised me into honesty. "Both, I think." We started talking the way strangers sometimes do in beautiful places far from home. They told me they'd met at a grief support group after both losing their husbands within months of each other. They'd bonded over widowhood and had become inseparable friends. "I cut off my sister 20 years ago," Dorothy said suddenly, as if she'd sensed what I needed to hear. "Everyone told me I'd regret it. That family was forever. That I should forgive and forget. But you know what? It was the best decision of my life. She was toxic, always had been, and I'd spent 50 years making excuses for her behavior. Walking away gave me peace I'd never known was possible. People act like cutting off family is this terrible, selfish thing," Eleanor added. "But sometimes it's the most self-preserving thing you can do. Sometimes it's survival." I felt something in my chest loosen. "I've been feeling guilty," I admitted. "Like maybe I went too far. Like maybe I'm the cruel one." "Are you?" Dorothy asked directly. "Did you hurt them for fun, or did you protect yourself from people who were actively harming you?" "The second one." "Then you're not cruel. You're finally sane." We sat together for over an hour, these two women I'd just met, giving me permission I didn't know I needed. Permission to walk away. Permission to choose myself. Permission to be free without guilt. My phone, which I'd brought with me out of habit, buzzed in my beach bag. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. A text message from a blocked number had somehow gotten through, probably because I'd unblocked my father's contact to facilitate the hospital billing. The message was simple. "I'm sorry. I failed you as a father. I don't deserve forgiveness, but you deserve to know this wasn't your fault. It was always mine." I read it once, then again. The words I'd waited my whole life to hear arriving now when I'd finally stopped needing them. I turned toward the ocean, watching the waves roll in with their eternal rhythm. Tears streamed down my face again, but I wasn't sure what they meant. Relief, grief, vindication. Maybe all of it at once. "Forgiveness?" Dorothy asked, gently, seeing my expression. I thought about it for a long moment, feeling the sun on my face, my grandmother's letter still in my hand, these two wise women beside me who understood what it meant to choose yourself over obligation. "Maybe," I whispered, "but not reconciliation. Never reconciliation." I didn't respond to my father's text. I simply blocked the number again and put my phone away. Dorothy and Eleanor invited me to join them for breakfast, and I accepted, grateful for the company of people who understood what it meant to choose peace over obligation. While I was eating macadamia nut pancakes and laughing at Eleanor's story about her disastrous attempt at surfing my parents' world was completing its collapse back in California. The court judgment came through 3 weeks after my father was released from the hospital. Mr. Henderson called me to deliver the news with professional satisfaction in his voice. "The judge ruled in your favor on all counts. Your parents have been ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution, legal fees, and punitive damages. They have 60 days to begin payment or face additional legal consequences." $50,000 they didn't have. The house, the modest 3-bedroom in Riverside they'd lived in for 30 years, was already in foreclosure. They'd been able to afford the mortgage only because of my monthly contributions that had secretly been subsidizing their lifestyle for over a decade. Without that income, without their credit cards that were now maxed out and flagged for fraud, without any savings, because they'd spent everything on Lisa's needs and wants, they couldn't make the payments. The foreclosure notice would have been taped to their front door the day my father came home from his 2-week hospital stay. He'd see it as he walked up the driveway, that official document, with its legal language and firm deadlines, and he'd understand that they were losing everything. My mother's part-time bookkeeping job, which had never paid much, but had given her a sense of purpose, and some spending money was gone too. Her boss, a small business owner named Patricia, who'd employed her for 8 years, had called her into the office 2 days after the video went viral. "Susan, I'm sorry, but I have to let you go. Several clients have seen that video and expressed concerns about having you handle their finances. It's bad for business. I can't afford to keep you on." My father's credit score, once solidly in the 700s, had been destroyed by the fraud investigations, the maxed-out cards, the mounting unpaid bills. He'd never be able to get a loan again, never refinance, never recover financially from this disaster. The social isolation was perhaps worse than the financial ruin. Their former friends, couples they'd known for years, people they'd had over for barbecues and game nights, now crossed the street when they saw my parents coming. I could imagine my mother at the grocery store spotting Linda from her book club in the produce section, raising her hand to wave, and watching Linda turn abruptly and walk the other direction. The church pastor, Father Michael, who'd known them for 15 years, had visited them at home one afternoon. He'd sat in their living room with his kind face and gentle voice and delivered a devastating message. "Richard, Susan, I think it would be best if you found a new congregation. The parish council has received numerous complaints from members who are uncomfortable worshiping alongside you. We believe in forgiveness, of course, but the community needs time to heal. Perhaps a fresh start elsewhere would be beneficial for everyone." Cast out of their church, the final death of their social identity. Lisa was still living at home, she had nowhere else to go, and she'd become a constant source of recrimination. Every day brought new screaming matches. "You ruined my life. I can't get a job because every time someone Googles my name, that video comes up. Michael won't talk to me. I have no friends. This is your fault." Thanksgiving had come and gone without a single invitation from extended family. They'd spent it alone, the three of them eating store-bought turkey and avoiding eye contact across the table. When my father was finally released from the hospital with his new medications and his strict instructions to avoid stress, he came home to a house that reflected their internal decay. My mother hadn't cleaned in weeks, too depressed to do much more than lie on the couch watching television. Dishes piled in the sink, mail scattered across the counter, most of it bills and legal notices they couldn't bear to open. The foreclosure notice on the door. Lisa's bedroom, which my father passed on his way to his own room, looked like a tornado had hit it. Clothes everywhere, makeup smashed into the carpet from one of her tantrum's holes punched in the walls. The room of someone who'd never learned to process disappointment with anything other than destruction. The living room was nearly empty now. They'd sold the furniture, the couch, the coffee table, the television stand to pay for basic expenses. What remained was a folding chair and a small TV on the floor. My father sat in that folding chair that first night home, looking around at the bare walls where family photos used to hang, at the empty spaces where their life used to be, and asked the question that had no good answer: what have we done? My mother had no response. She sat on the floor beside him, and they stayed there in silence as the sun set and the room grew dark. That evening, my mother's laptop chimed with an incoming email. She opened it reflexively, expecting another bill or another legal notice. Instead, she found a message from a producer at the local ABC affiliate station. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Chen, we are currently producing a story on family financial abuse in the wake of recent viral social media incidents. We understand that your daughter Sarah Chen has filed a lawsuit alleging that you stole her inheritance from her late grandmother, among other financial improprieties. We would like to offer you the opportunity to comment on these allegations for our segment, which will air next week. Would you be willing to participate in an on-camera interview? Please respond within 48 hours. My mother's hands would have been shaking as she read it. A news story. Television. Their faces, their names, their shame broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people who didn't even know them yet, but would judge them all the same. She'd show the email to my father, and they'd sit there in their empty living room, understanding that the fall wasn't over. It was still happening, gaining momentum, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. I returned to California 2 weeks later, but not to my old apartment. I'd given notice before leaving for Hawaii and found a new place in a different neighborhood, a fresh start in every sense. The one bedroom was in a quieter area of San Diego, closer to the coast, with large windows that let in plenty of light. It felt like the physical manifestation of the new life I was building. The package from Mr. Henderson's office arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The delivery driver had to get my signature, and I carried the medium-sized box inside with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. My grandmother's personal effects, the tangible remains of the person who'd loved me most in the world. I set it on my kitchen table and carefully cut through the packing tape. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper and bubble wrap, were pieces of my grandmother's life. A jewelry box containing her pearl earrings, a gold locket, several rings I remembered her wearing. A handwritten recipe book with food-stained pages documenting decades of family meals, photographs loose and in albums, and there wrapped in soft cloth the jade bracelet I'd admired as a child, the one she'd always promised would be mine someday. I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist. It was cool and smooth, slightly too large, but I didn't care. It felt like having a piece of her with me. The photo album was leather-bound and heavy. I opened it carefully, and what I found made my throat tight with emotion. Page after page of photographs of me and my grandmother. Me at age 5 standing on a stool beside her in her kitchen, both of us covered in flour. Me at 10 kneeling in her garden holding up a tomato we'd grown together. Me at 13 curled up in her favorite chair while she sat beside me, both of us reading. Me at 25 laughing at something she'd said over tea at her house. What struck me most was what wasn't there. Almost no photos included my parents. In 35 years of documentation, they were nearly invisible. My grandmother had noticed. She'd seen what I'd tried so hard to ignore. I turned each photo over and found she'd written notes on the backs in her careful script. Sarah, age 8, maid honor roll, parents didn't attend ceremony. I took her for ice cream. She tried not to cry. Sarah, age 12, science fair, first place. Parents said they were too busy. I drove 2 hours to watch her receive her trophy. Sarah, age 16, won full scholarship to UC Irvine. Parents said finally useful. My heart breaks for this beautiful, brilliant girl who deserves so much more. She'd documented everything. Every disappointment, every moment they'd failed me, every time she'd stepped in to be what they should have been. She'd been bearing witness, and I hadn't even known. The last photo in the album was recent, taken just weeks before she died. We were in her hospital room. I was holding her hand, and despite the tubes and monitors, she was smiling at me with such love it hurt to look at. Someone, maybe a nurse, had captured the moment. On the back, in shakier handwriting, she'd written simply, "My Sarah, the daughter of my heart." I was crying now, but I kept unpacking. At the bottom of the box, I found a small thumb drive with a sticky note attached. "For Sarah, watch this alone." I carried my laptop to the couch, plugged in the drive, and clicked on the single video file it contained. The timestamp showed it was recorded a month before she died, during one of the rare days when she'd had enough strength to sit up. My grandmother's face filled the screen, thinner than I remembered, but still her. She was in her living room, the afternoon light coming through the windows behind her. "Hello, my darling Sarah." She began, her voice soft but clear. "If you're watching this, I've gone to be with your grandfather. Don't be sad, sweetheart. I'm at peace because I know I've protected you." She paused, taking a breath that I could see cost her effort. "Your parents will be angry about the will. Let them be angry. You owe them nothing. They gave you life, yes, but they never gave you love, not real love. Real love doesn't keep score. Real love doesn't play favorites. Real love doesn't exploit the person it claims to cherish." Her eyes, still sharp despite her illness, looked directly into the camera, directly at me across time. "I gave you this inheritance, not because you need money, but because you need to know. Someone saw your worth. Someone treasures you. I watched you become this remarkable woman despite everything they did to diminish you, and I am so incredibly proud." Tears were streaming down my face, but I couldn't look away. "Live boldly, love deeply, and never ever settle for scraps again. You deserve someone who sees you the way your grandfather saw me, as a partner, an equal, someone precious. Don't waste another moment on people who can't appreciate the gift that you are." I'm so proud of you. I love you always. Grandma. The video ended. I sobbed deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place I'd been holding closed for years. But these weren't tears of pain. They were healing tears, the kind that wash away old wounds and make space for something new. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered to the blank screen. I promise I'll make you proud. I was about to close my laptop when I noticed there was still something in the box. Wrapped in cream-colored silk at the very bottom was a small velvet ring box. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was my grandmother's wedding ring, a simple gold band with 3 small diamonds. My grandfather had given it to her 60 years ago. She'd worn it every single day until arthritis made it too painful, and then she'd kept it in her jewelry box, touching it sometimes like a talisman. There was a note tucked beneath it, written in that same shaky handwriting from her final days. When you find someone worthy of you, give them this. You deserve a love that honors you. Love, Grandma. I held the ring for a long moment, feeling its weight, its history, its promise. Then I threaded it onto the delicate gold chain I wore around my neck and fastened it. The ring settled just above my heart, warm against my skin. My grandmother's love, her wisdom, her hope for my future. All of it right here, close to my heart where it belonged. I lived with my grandmother's ring against my heart for 3 weeks, settling into my new apartment, my new routine, my new life. I'd started looking at job postings, thinking about what I wanted to do next, now that I wasn't spending all my energy managing my family's dysfunction. The inheritance gave me time to be deliberate, to choose something I actually wanted, rather than just taking the first stable paycheck. Then my phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sarah. My mother's voice was raw, terrified. Your father had another heart attack. A bad one. He's in surgery right now. The doctor says it's critical. They need to do emergency bypass surgery, and the insurance won't cover all of it. It's $75,000, Sarah. We don't have it. Your father is dying, and only you can save him. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of that old familiar manipulation. Only you can save him. The same script, different emergency. I already told you I'd cover his medical bills, I said calmly. I'll call the hospital directly and arrange payment. But Sarah, he's asking for you. He wants to see you. Please just come to the hospital. Just see him once. No. Sarah. I said no. I'll pay for the surgery. I'll make sure he gets the care he needs. But I'm not coming there. I hung up before she could respond. Then I called Riverside Community Hospital, navigated to the billing department, and spoke to the night supervisor. My father, Richard Chen, is currently in emergency surgery. I want to pay for all medical expenses related to this hospitalization. Please send me the paperwork. Are you sure, Ms. Chen, the estimated cost is quite high? I'm sure. I'll wire the money tomorrow morning. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and called Mr. Henderson, even though it was late. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice alert despite the hour. Sarah, is everything all right? My father had another heart attack. I'm paying for the surgery, but my mother wants me to visit him. I don't want to go. Am I being cruel? Sarah, you've already paid for one hospitalization. You're about to pay for a second, far more expensive one. You're literally saving your father's life with money he tried to steal from you. You're being more than fair. You owe them nothing more. Not your presence, not your forgiveness, not your emotional energy. You've done enough. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I wired $75,000 from my inheritance account to the hospital, and I included a note with the payment. This is the last time. Consider all debts paid, yours and mine. My mother called 6 more times over the next 2 days. I didn't answer. She left voicemails begging me to visit. He's asking for you every time he wakes up. Please, Sarah. He needs you. I deleted them all. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. My father came through the surgery successfully. The cardiac surgeon told him he was lucky the damage could have been fatal, but they'd caught it in time. When he woke in the recovery room groggy from anesthesia and pain medication, the first thing he asked was about the bill. The nurse, a kind-faced woman in her 50s named Patricia, checked her tablet. "It's all taken care of, Mr. Chen. Your daughter paid for everything." My father's eyes filled with hope. "She came?" "No, sir. She just sent the money." I learned about this conversation later from Mr. Henderson, who'd stayed in contact with the hospital to ensure everything was handled properly. He told me my father had broken down crying right there in the recovery room with nurses and other patients around. "She saved my life," my father had said through tears, "and she won't even look at me." For the first time, he understood what abandonment really felt like. Not the dramatic planned cruelty he'd inflicted on me at the airport, but something quieter and more devastating. To be saved but not seen. To be kept alive but not wanted. To know that someone cared enough about your survival to pay a fortune for your medical care, but not enough about you as a person to spend even 5 minutes in your presence. The pain I'd felt standing in that airport, realizing my family had left me behind like I was nothing. He was feeling it now, multiplied by the knowledge that he'd caused it himself. According to Patricia, the nurse who'd been there, my father had whispered to her on his 3rd day of recovery, Can you give her a message? Tell her I understand now. Tell her she was right to leave." Patricia had paused in checking his vitals. She'd seen the videos online like everyone else had read the news stories about the family who'd stolen from their daughter. She looked at my father with something that might have been pity or might have been clarity. "Sir," she said quietly, "she didn't leave you. She freed herself. There's a difference." My father had no response to that. He just turned his face toward the window and watched the sun set over Riverside, understanding for the first time that some damage can't be undone, that some betrayals can't be forgiven, and that sometimes the consequences of your actions arrive exactly when you're finally ready to see them clearly. I started seeing a therapist after I returned from Hawaii. Her name was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and her office was in a quiet building near the harbor with windows that overlooked the water. I'd found her through my insurance provider, but I stayed with her because she didn't try to fix me or tell me what to feel. She just listened and asked questions that made me think. "I don't know if I'm supposed to forgive them," I said during our 4th session, sitting in the comfortable chair across from her desk. "Everyone keeps talking about forgiveness like it's the end point, the goal I'm supposed to reach. But I don't feel forgiving. I don't feel angry anymore either. I just feel tired." Dr. Rodriguez set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, Sarah. You can forgive someone and still maintain boundaries. You can even forgive someone and never speak to them again. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, not for them." "I don't know if I forgive them yet," I admitted. "But I'm not angry anymore. I'm not lying awake at night thinking about what they did. I'm just tired of carrying it all." "That's actually progress," she said gently. "Indifference is healthier than rage. Rage keeps you connected to them, keeps you engaged with the injury. Indifference means you're moving on." After that session, I went home and did something Dr. Rodriguez had suggested as a therapeutic exercise. I sat at my kitchen table with a blank piece of paper and wrote a letter to my parents. Not to send, maybe never to send, but to articulate what I needed to say. The words came slowly at first, then faster. "Dear Mom and Dad," I began, then crossed it out. They didn't deserve the intimacy of those names anymore. "Richard and Susan." I started again. "I'm writing this letter not because I think you'll ever read it, but because I need to say these things out loud, even if only to myself." My pen moved across the page, and I let the truth pour out. "You taught me I was worthless. Every comparison to Lisa, every dismissal of my achievements, every time you took from me without asking, you taught me that my value was only in what I could provide. But Grandma taught me I was priceless. She saw me when you refused to look. She loved me when you only used me. I chose to believe her. I paused, flexing my hand, then continued. I forgive you not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger was poisoning me, not you. You were fine continuing, as you always had, taking and taking while I burned with resentment. Forgiving you means I stop letting you live rent-free in my head. It means I take back the energy I was spending on hating you and use it to build something beautiful instead. The next paragraph was harder to write, but necessary. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. It doesn't mean I'm obligated to have a relationship with you. It doesn't mean I need to give you chances to hurt me again. I'm closing this chapter. You are no longer part of my story. I will think of you the way I think of people I knew in high school, fondly, or not so fondly, but always in the past tense, never in the present. I finished with words I'd been holding inside for weeks. I hope you find peace. I hope you learn something from this. I hope you become better people, not for me, but for yourselves. But whether you do or don't, I've finally found my own peace, and that's what matters. I signed it simply, Sarah, and folded the letter, carefully sliding it into an envelope. I addressed it to my parents' house in Riverside, the house they were about to lose to foreclosure, and sealed it. Then I stood in my kitchen holding that envelope over the trash can. One motion, and it would be gone. The word said, but never sent. The closure achieved privately, but I couldn't do it. Instead, I walked to my bedroom and pulled out a small wooden memory box I'd bought at a vintage shop. Inside were a few photos of my grandmother, the handwritten note that had come with her wedding ring, the original letter she'd sent with the will. I placed the unsealed envelope inside and closed the lid. Maybe someday, I said aloud to my empty apartment. But not today. And that's okay. I realized, standing there with my grandmother's ring warm against my chest, and that letter safely stored away, that I didn't need my parents to read it. I didn't need them to acknowledge what they'd done, apologize properly, or validate my pain. I'd already moved on. The letter wasn't for them, it had never been for them. It was for me, proof that I'd processed this, said what needed to be said, and chosen to let it go on my own terms. 3 days later, I was having coffee with my friend Rachel, a coworker from my old accounting firm who'd stayed in touch after I'd left. We were sitting on my balcony enjoying the afternoon sun when I heard the mail slot in my front door rattle. I excused myself and found a single envelope on the floor. My name and new address written in handwriting I recognized immediately, Lisa's looping dramatic script. The return address was my parents' house. No return name, just the address, as if she didn't want to claim ownership of whatever was inside. I picked it up and walked back to the balcony, turning it over in my hands. Rachel noticed immediately. "What's that?" "A letter from my sister." "Are you going to read it?" I looked at that envelope, feeling its weight, imagining what it might contain. An apology. More manipulation. An attempt to explain or justify. It didn't matter. Whatever Lisa had to say, I didn't need to hear it. Her words had already caused enough damage. I'd spent too many years trying to earn her respect, her acknowledgement, her sisterly affection. I was done. I smiled slowly, feeling the rightness of the decision settle over me like a warm blanket. "Actually," I said, "I don't think I need to." I walked to my kitchen, Rachel following with an expression of surprise and something that might have been admiration. I opened the recycling bin and held the unopened envelope over it for just a moment. Then I let it drop. It landed among the junk mail and empty wine bottles, just another piece of paper with no power over me anymore. "That felt good," I said, and meant it. 6 months can change everything. 6 months can turn a life you barely recognize as your own into something that finally feels like home. I quit my job at Morrison & Associates 3 months after returning from Hawaii. Too many memories. Too many people who knew the old Sarah, the one who'd answer emails at midnight and never take vacation days because she was too busy sending money to her family. I found a remote position with a tech startup in Austin, better pay, flexible hours, and no one who looked at me with pity or curiosity about that viral video. My new apartment was everything my old one wasn't. One bedroom, but with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Pacific. I'd decorated it entirely to my own taste. Soft blues and whites plants everywhere. Art I'd chosen because I loved it, not because it was practical. Every morning I woke up to the sound of waves and the sight of sunrise over the ocean, and I felt grateful in a way I'd never experienced before. The Toyota 4Runner I'd bought sat in my designated parking spot, title in my name, only paid for in full with my grandmother's inheritance. It was silver with tan leather interior, exactly what I'd always wanted, but never let myself have. Some mornings, I'd just sit in it before starting my day, running my hands over the steering wheel, marveling that something this nice was actually mine. My social life had transformed too. Rachel and I had coffee every week. I'd joined a book club where people actually wanted to hear my opinions. I'd started taking a pottery class on Thursday evenings. These were people who'd chosen to spend time with me, not because we were related or obligated, but because they genuinely enjoyed my company. It was a revelation. On a Wednesday afternoon, I stopped at my favorite coffee shop near the harbor. I was waiting for my latte when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Sarah Chen. I turned to find Mrs. Anderson Michael's mother looking elegant as ever in a cream blazer and pearl earrings, her face lit up with genuine warmth. "Mrs. Anderson, how are you?" "Please call me Catherine." She gestured to a table by the window. "Do you have a few minutes? I'd love to catch up." We ended up talking for over an hour. She told me about a charity foundation she ran, about her husband's recent retirement, about their travels. And then carefully, she brought up that day at the airport. "I want to apologize," she said, her hands wrapped around her teacup. "I saw signs that something was wrong with your family dynamic, but I didn't speak up until it was too late. I should have said something sooner, should have checked on you." "You helped Michael see the truth," I said. That was enough. "He asks about you sometimes, you know." Catherine's eyes were kind but assessing. "He's not with anyone. I think he feels he dodged a bullet with Lisa, but he regrets how everything happened. He wishes he'd gotten to know you better before everything fell apart." "He's a good person," I said carefully. "He deserves someone honest." "So do you, dear." Catherine smiled. "Actually, I'm hosting a charity gala next month. It's for a literacy foundation I chair. Michael will be there along with some other lovely people. Would you consider coming? I'd love to have you." I felt my heart skip, but I kept my voice steady. "I'd like that. Thank you." We exchanged contact information, and as we said goodbye, Catherine squeezed my hand. "You're blooming, Sarah. I can see it. Your grandmother would be so proud." That evening, as I was making dinner in my sunny kitchen, my phone buzzed with notifications. A lot of them. I checked and found that my story had been featured in an online publication, one of those human interest pieces about overcoming adversity. The headline read, "Woman Escapes Family Financial Abuse. A Story of Courage and Self-Worth." I hadn't given an interview, but apparently someone had compiled information from public court records, the viral videos, and social media posts. It was mostly accurate and surprisingly well written. Within hours, my Instagram DMs were flooded with messages from strangers. "You gave me courage to leave my toxic mother. I've been funding my brother's lifestyle for years. Your story made me realize I don't have to. Thank you for showing me that choosing yourself isn't selfish." Hundreds of them from people who'd seen themselves in my story. I responded to as many as I could, offering encouragement, sharing resources Dr. Rodriguez had given me. I looked up my sister's name out of curiosity. Her Instagram was gone. Her Facebook deleted. Her entire online presence scrubbed clean because she couldn't handle the comments, the judgment, the consequences of her actions made public. Then I Googled my parents' names. The first page of results was all scandal news articles, blog posts, analyzing the situation, the court records from my lawsuit. Their carefully constructed image of respectability had been replaced by a digital record of their failures that would follow them forever. I felt nothing looking at those results. No satisfaction, no guilt, just indifference. That's when I decided to post something myself. I hadn't shared anything publicly in months, but I wanted to mark this moment, this transformation. I set up my phone on the balcony, positioned myself in front of my apartment with the ocean visible behind me, and held up my wrist to show my grandmother's jade bracelet catching the late afternoon light. I took the photo, applied a simple filter, and wrote a caption, "Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about choosing yourself first." I posted it and set my phone down, not expecting much. But within minutes, comments started flooding in. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers who'd found my account through the article. Words of support, love, admiration. And then one comment from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, just initials for the username M.A. "I'm proud of you." My heart skipped. M.A. Michael Anderson. I clicked on the profile, but it was private with no posts visible. Just those 3 words in my comments section. I stared at my phone, my grandmother's ring warm against my chest, the ocean breeze ruffling my hair, and I smiled. Whether it was Michael or not didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd built a life worth being proud of, a life that was entirely beautifully mine. 6 months passed like a dream I didn't want to wake from. My new company promoted me to senior financial analyst with a team of 3 people reporting to me. I'd started dating someone we'd met at Katherine Anderson's charity gala, actually, and whether it would become something serious remained to be seen. But it felt easy and honest, in a way relationships never had before. My friends and I were planning a trip to Italy and France for the fall, checking off destinations from a list my grandmother had kept in her recipe book, places she'd always wanted to see but never had the chance to visit. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely happy. Not performing happiness for an audience, not proving anything to anyone, just existing in a state of contentment that felt as natural as breathing. I was making dinner on a Tuesday evening, pasta with fresh tomatoes from the farmer's market, when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and froze. Dad appeared on the caller ID. A number I'd blocked and unblocked multiple times over the past year, never quite sure what I wanted. I stared at it through 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. My hand hovered over the screen. Then, for reasons I couldn't fully articulate, I answered. "Hello." "Sarah." My father's voice was different, weaker, older, like he'd aged a decade in the year since I'd last heard it. "It's Dad. I don't expect you to talk long. I just needed to tell you something." I said nothing, just listened, my wooden spoon still in my hand, pasta sauce simmering on the stove behind me. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I'm so deeply, truly sorry. I failed you as a father. I chose my ego and favoritism over love. I chose keeping your mother happy over doing what was right. I chose Lisa's tantrums over your quiet strength. I lost the daughter who actually loved me, who would have been there for me, who deserved so much better than what we gave her. I know it's too late. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to hear it. Needed you to know, you were never the problem, Sarah. You were always the best of us, and we were too blind, too selfish, too caught up in our own dysfunction to see it." I turned off the burner and leaned against my kitchen counter, processing his words. They were the words I'd waited 35 years to hear, and now that they'd arrived, I felt calm. Not vindicated, not angry, just calm. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "I think I needed to hear it." "Does this mean—" Hope crept into his voice. Can we start over? Can I see you sometime?" "No, Dad." I kept my voice honest, neither cold nor warm, just truthful. "I forgive you, but I can't have you in my life. The person I was when I needed you, she's gone. I spent decades trying to earn your love, trying to be good enough, useful enough, valuable enough. That Sarah doesn't exist anymore. The person I am now, she doesn't need you. And that's not cruel. That's just true." I heard him crying on the other end of the line, soft sobs that might have broken my heart once, but now just made me sad for him. "I understand," he managed. Can I call again someday, even just to know you're okay?" "I don't know." I said honestly, "Maybe, maybe not. I need to live my life for me now. Not for you, not to prove anything or earn anything. Just for me. I hope you find peace, Dad. I really do. But I've already found mine." "I'm glad," he whispered. "I'm glad you're free." I hung up gently, not in anger but in finality. Then I blocked the number again, not out of hate, but out of self-preservation. Some doors need to stay closed. I looked around my apartment at the photos of Rachel and my book club friends on the wall, at my grandmother's jade bracelet on my wrist, at my car keys on the hook by the door, at the life I'd built with my own hands, using my grandmother's gift. I walked to the mirror in my hallway and looked at my reflection. The woman staring back at me was strong, peaceful, free. "I'm free," I said aloud and smiled. My phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. "Hey, are you ready for dinner? We're meeting at 7, that new Italian place downtown." "Absolutely," I said, grabbing my purse and keys. "On my way." I walked out of my apartment and locked the door behind me. If there had been a camera following my story, it might have cut to my parents' house in that moment. Dark windows, a "for sale" sign on the lawn that had been there for months with no buyers, empty rooms where a family used to live. But the camera wouldn't linger there. It would come back to me driving away in my silver 4Runner radio, playing a song I loved genuinely, laughing at something Rachel was saying through my car's speakers, the sunset painting the sky ahead of me in shades of gold and pink. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's indifference. It's building a life so beautiful, so fulfilling, that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. They become a footnote in your story rather than the main plot. Sarah didn't destroy her family, she simply stopped letting them destroy her. She chose herself. She chose freedom. She chose joy. And in the end, that was the most powerful choice of all. And that's Sarah's story. A story about a woman who spent 35 years trying to earn love that should have been freely given, who finally chose herself when choosing her family meant losing herself completely. If you're watching this and you see yourself in Sarah's journey, I want you to know something important. You're not selfish for setting boundaries. You're not cruel for walking away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. And you're not alone. Thousands of people shared their own stories with Sarah after hers went public, all of them carrying the same weight, the same guilt, the same fear that choosing themselves made them the bad person in someone else's story. But here's the truth Sarah learned, and I hope you take with you today. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is love yourself enough to leave. Sometimes freedom looks like an empty chair at Thanksgiving. Sometimes healing means blocking a number. And sometimes the family you need isn't the one you were born into, but the one you choose along the way. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between family loyalty and self-preservation? Have you walked away from toxic relationships, or are you still trying to decide if you should? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story moved you, if it made you think or feel or see your own life differently, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every week I bring you stories like this, real stories about real people facing impossible situations and finding their way through. Stories about courage, justice, and what it really means to choose yourself. Remember, healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing yourself first. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.